The time is 7 o'clock. I'll now call to order the Bridgewater Town Council meeting. We appreciate the attendance tonight. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Please join me.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I have not been made aware of the passing of any Bridgewater veterans, but I would ask that everyone still join me for a moment of silence to honor those veterans who have passed. Thank you. The first item we have on the agenda tonight is the approval from minutes from prior meetings. The first approval is the meeting minutes from March 26th. I would entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The motion passes. The next item is the approval of meeting minutes from April 9th, 2024. I would entertain a motion to approve. Councilor McKinnon has
I
to
have to
abstain from this
abstain,
one.
yep.
I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
A motion and a second.
Yeah.
Any additional discussion? Seeing none, we can go to a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The motion passes. The next item on the agenda is item B, announcements from the president. I have no announcements this evening. Next item is item C, proclamations. I have no proclamations this evening. The next item is item D, citizen open forum. I just want to maybe introduce this with a prepared statement. Due to Massachusetts open meeting law requirements, discussions will not take place during public comment periods. If appropriate, responses to questions and concerns will be given by the town manager at a future town council meeting. And I will say, I know some people are probably here to speak about the zoning. When we get to that, we will also allow public comment specific to that zoning amendment. So if you do have a comment about the zoning, you're certainly welcome to talk about it at public comment, but I would encourage you maybe to save it for that item on the agenda. But I would welcome anyone to the podium who has a public comment. Just please state your name and address, and I would ask that you keep it to 3 minutes.
Ray Ajemian, 221 Aldrich Road. I also chair the tree committee for Bridgewater, and in that capacity, I'd like to invite all of you, the council and everybody in the room, to our Arbor Day event, which will be held this Friday at 10:30 in front of the Williams School. We intend to plant a cherry tree, which has been donated by Western Nursery to the town for our Arbor Day event. It's an important event for us because, as you were told at the last meeting, Bridgewater is now officially a tree city. But that only lasts for 1 year. You have to reapply every year. And one of the requirements is an Arbor Day event. So this is the Arbor Day event that we will be using to apply for a tree city status again. It's important, I think, for that reason, but also it simply shows that Bridgewater cares for the environment, wants to beautify the town, and therefore we should try to support it. So this Friday, 10:30 in front of the Williams School, a short presentation. The 3 students who did the drawings for our contest, which were out here until I guess the tripod failed, will also be present. So I would hope that some of you can show up for that time. Just quickly, I would also support the rezoning of the Central Square. I think it's about time that we do. I think there may be some possible negatives, but the positives outweigh that. So I would support that. I also support the flying of the flag, and Juneteenth also is very important. I think that the writers of the Constitution made the fatal error in putting slavery into the Constitution, and we should do everything possible to try to overcome that. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else care to speak? Please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Adeline Ellenberg, 76 Aldrich Road. And I would like to use this citizen comment time to state my points. I think that it is important that the council delay the vote when it comes to this form-based code that you are contemplating doing tonight. And I would like to point out in regard to the open meeting law, and this is from your manual, quote, "All inquiries should be responded to if the information is available at the time, or a public response should be forthcoming at a future meeting from the town council." Okay, so I would suggest that answers be provided to questions because that has been a complaint about the council. The questions are not being answered. I reiterate that I think Bridgewater needs to negotiate with the state. We are at capacity on water. We are at capacity on sewer. There is talk of it going from the college to the prison, other systems and so forth. I think Bridgewater, town of Bridgewater needs to get its place in order and negotiate with the state for these things to happen before we commit ourselves to the form-based code. Another thing I wanted to point out is the deadline. I understand it was stated by Mr. Gallagher, if I'm correct, that the actual deadline is in December, and I thought I heard something about June deadlines. I would like to put that question to the council at this time so that we can hear what are the specifics of the deadlines. Then, as for the grant deadlines, what grants are we talking about? Can we see the grant specifications? What do we have to do in order to get these grants? How much money are we getting from the grant versus how much Bridgewater is going to have to pay? So let's be forthcoming about the deadlines. Okay, and last, I would like to comment that there was formerly a contract review committee which reviewed contracts between, let's say, the town of Bridgewater and the state. And that has been disbanded. And the council partnership committee, which is supposed to work the town to the college, that has been disbanded also. So I think it's important that the committees be reinstated so that the town manager is not the sole party negotiating for the town of Bridgewater. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your indulgence.
Thank you. Would anybody else care to speak? Welcome.
Lynette Delano Chase, 60 Old Farm Road. I'd like to first thank you all for your service, those of you who will leave us on Saturday. I'd like to thank you for your support of the Pride flag and the Juneteenth. And I'd like to remind everyone here that this project has been discussed for over a year. This is the council that should be voting on it. You know the history, you know what has gone on, and you should be the council voting on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Janice Campbell Means. I live at 15 Indian Lane in Franklin. I sent an email a couple of weeks ago to requesting to speak as a non-residential resident. So I was told to just come up and you would
Mr.
vote.
President, I would motion that we suspend the rules in order to allow the attendee to speak.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? I see none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes.
Great,
Feel
thank you.
Yeah, we do ask that you stay to the 3-minute
Yes.
maximum though. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Town Council. Thank you for allowing me to speak as a Bridgewater non-residential member of Bridgewater. My name is Janice Campbell Means. Like I said, I live at 15 Indian Lane in Franklin. My mother lives at 280 Conant Street here in Bridgewater. This is where I was raised from 5 years old until my mid-20s. Excuse me. I am currently chair of the Bridgewater Communities of Civil Rights and one of the co-chairs of the Juneteenth Planning Committee. In a time when history is being rewritten, slavery wasn't that bad, It was good for them to learn a trade. Juneteenth is fake, so on and so on and so on. The raising of the Juneteenth flag is welcoming a sense of pride that Bridgewater has taken the step to validate, respect, and recognize the history of Juneteenth. For myself, family, and friends, it is a feeling of welcoming. I feel that the pride of the elders of the African-American Bridgewater community that have gone before me are feel pride, and I feel the pride of the up-and-coming generations. I ask that the Bridgewater not take a step back and continue flying the Juneteenth flag. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Steve Black, 145 Leggy Street. I'd like to read a statement from two professors at BSU. It's Dr. Emily Field and Dr. Jamie Huff. And this is their statement. I don't want to mess up my time here. Although we do not live in Bridgewater, we are in the 10th year of teaching at BSU and have had the privilege of working with many local organizations. We wanted to make a statement this evening because of our work with the African American Studies Program and our research into Bridgewater's own Black and Indigenous communities of the 18th and 19th centuries. Juneteenth celebrations occur all over the U.S. These events are welcoming, inclusive gatherings that highlight African American history and culture. Bridgewater's Juneteenth event draws people from all over this community and brings them together to take joy in this liberation. The Juneteenth flag is raised in the spirit of inviting us to learn more about American history and to celebrate African American culture. Juneteenth refers to June 19th, 1865, and this is the day when federal troops came to Galveston, Texas, and informed the people there that slavery had been ended by the Emancipation Proclamation 2.5 years earlier. There were still people held in slavery in the states not covered by the 13th Amendment until December 6, 1985, when it was ratified. This confusion around the endpoint of slavery is not unique to the South. Our research into Bridgewater's history has established at least 450 Black and Indigenous people living here in the 18th and 19th centuries, many of whom were enslaved. While the 1783 Quock Walker case weakened slavery in Massachusetts, people continued to treat others as property after that date, including right here in Bridgewater, seeking their return when they chose to leave their enslavers' homes and bequeathing them in their wills alongside animals, furniture, and other goods. One thing we know for sure is that Juneteenth is a holiday African Americans chose for themselves to honor and celebrate emancipation, a symbol of the day that the last of their people were free. The holiday began in Texas, spread throughout the South, and became a federal holiday through the efforts of Black activists. We don't know what objections people might have to this flag raising, but we can speak to some we might imagine. First, slavery is not something that happened somewhere else. It was very much a part of Massachusetts and part of Bridgewater. Celebrating its end is something that we should all embrace.
10 seconds.
Second and last, there is nothing divisive in a holiday that celebrates the freedom of African Americans from slavery. If we can't agree that people shouldn't be treated as property, then what on earth can we agree on? Just as like the raising of these flags go some distance in showing Black and LGBTQ people, and these groups are overlapping, not
Sorry, your
separate.
time is up. We do have a second public comment. I would invite you to maybe complete the reading at that later on.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you for your time.
Yeah, welcome.
Beryl Domingo, 36 Saddle Drive. Good evening, counselors. I speak to you as an immigrant and an African-American resident of Bridgewater. To see the Juneteenth flag flying in front of the Academy building is such a welcoming symbol for all, but especially for the Black and brown people of Bridgewater. It instills a feeling of hope and belonging. It's an amazing feeling when you see that flag flying. I would like to read a statement by the current president of the United States when he signed Juneteenth as a federal holiday. He said, Juneteenth marks both the long, hard night of slavery and subjugation, and a promise of a brighter morning to come. It is a day of profound weight and power that reminds us of our extraordinary capacity to heal, hope, and emerge from our most painful moments into a better version of ourselves. And on the matter of the pride flag, I'd like to ask that you show with your affirmative vote tonight that Bridgewater is a town that cares about all who live and work here, and that we celebrate the LGBTQ+ community of which my son is a member by flying the pride flag high and proud. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Amanda Napier. I live at 316 Main Street here in Bridgewater. Thank you for receiving my comments tonight, and thank you to neighbors for also joining the chorus in support of the resolution honoring Juneteenth and the raising of the flag for the town holiday again this year. I speak to you this evening as your neighbor, as a religious anthropologist and social historian, and as an ally in progress. As you know, the holiday commemorates June 19th, 1865, when over 250,000 enslaved people of African descent in Galveston, Texas, learned from Union troops that they were, by executive decree, free. Can you imagine the elation felt in Galveston on that day? While African Americans have long celebrated Juneteenth, as we know, the day is of much newer significance to many other Americans, including white people like myself. I am proud that Juneteenth has become a federal and town holiday in the last few years, and locally that's thanks to many of my neighbors who are sitting in this room. I'm in favor of this continued tradition of raising the flag, not only because that momentous day was the true end to the practice of the transatlantic slave trade, one of the most shameful institutions in American history that also impacted us here in Bridgewater, but I'm also in favor because Juneteenth serves as a reminder for me that freedom for all has never been truly complete in the US, and is something that we have to keep working for and insisting on, aspiring to, and getting uncomfortable about until we really are all free. During Reconstruction, some Euro-Americans worked very hard to undermine African-American freedom. Forms of neo-slavery cropped up, like convict leasing and peonage, made possible by the loophole in the 13th Amendment, which outlawed slavery except to punish people convicted of a crime, a loophole that still exists today. Back then, violations of Black codes enabled wealthy whites to recapture Black Americans and enforce their labor. Thank goodness Black codes have been abolished. But thanks to the 13th Amendment, many of our trash cans and benches in parks, as well as high school auditorium seats, are manufactured by incarcerated people in Massachusetts for as little as 14 cents to $1 per hour. And these incarcerated sisters, brothers, and siblings are disproportionately Black and brown, a legacy of slavery. I can imagine the elation felt in Galveston on June 19th, 1865, and I will celebrate its commemoration this year when we raise that flag again, and I trust that we will. But I will celebrate it not as a final triumph, but as an aspiration and a mandate, because I genuinely believe that none of us is really free until we're all free. Until then, our freedoms are partial and predicated upon others' unfreedom, which is to say that's an impoverished form of freedom and not really freedom at all. If anyone here is opposed to the raising of the Juneteenth flag, I encourage you to consider that someone else's gained freedom only enlarges and ensures your own. The Juneteenth flag does not threaten you, it protects you. So I urge you, dear town councilors, to safeguard the commemoration of Juneteenth, whose flag is a sign of a very real triumph, and also of an aspiration, a mandate, and a challenge I believe democracy demands of us all. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else care to speak? If only we could decree that. Fortunately, we can't.
Good evening. I wish I could turn the heat down. I can't. I can't. Sam Baumgarten, 60 Short Street. I'll follow up with what the previous speaker said, and also to reinforce my own comments from 2 weeks ago. that the flying of the pride flag and the Juneteenth flag are, in a way, kind of small symbols, but very important gestures to keep Bridgewater in the public eye as a welcoming town. And to remind ourselves, as was just stated, that the Pledge of Allegiance has not yet come to fruition. We are still working on freedom and justice for all, and these are important steps to help us get there. On a related matter, in a way, because the flags, again, are kind of a symbolic gesture, but this is a very much more specific issue that just came to me a couple of days ago, talking with a young man who navigates this town in a wheelchair. And he was talking about the challenges of navigating the sidewalks. And I got to thinking about the fact that we need to treat those individuals with more care and consideration. And I'd like to know, perhaps at the next meeting, exactly what we are doing to make the navigation from the town center down Main Street safe for people in wheelchairs. And finally, thank you to Mr. Gallagher for your 9 years, almost 9 years. And Mr. Moore for your 3, and Mr. George, who's not here, I appreciate your service. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else care to speak? Welcome.
Good evening, Janet Hanson from Pleasant Street, Bridgewater. First off, as far as the pride flag and the Juneteenth, I thought it was, once we decided it was going to be every year. Do we have to do this every year, make a proclamation? I say let's be done with it. Say, yes, we can fly them, and then we won't have to be doing this every single year. It should be automatic. That's my feeling on that. I also hope tonight, I'm going to speak when you talk about the zoning, but I do hope tonight you're going to include the CBDS. I've asked that a few times because I never hear anything about that, and there's some language in there that's making me concerned about demolition. And I never hear anything, unless I've missed it. I don't see that that's brought up at all. It seems everything's the R, which is very, very controversial. So I would like to have that brought up. I also am questioning about waivers and variances. I don't understand why in the CBDR, why we need variance and waivers in there. If you have that checklist, that's supposed to be what everybody is knowing what they need to do, and they make all the checklists. So why do we have to have variance and waivers included in there? And why should only one person decide if there should be a variance and waiver? And I don't know who the CD staff is. I see that written. I'd like clarification of who the staff is. And I still going to say it, I don't want 5-story buildings, but I'm also concerned about, I couldn't find it in there. If you have a 5-story building behind a frontage building, it's not going to hide it. It's still going to be tall. But do they have to comply with the materials used on the frontage? You know, because it's very nice. We like how they're supposed to be designed. But do the back ones still need to do that? I think they should. Not that I think they should be there anyways. But those are some of the things that I'm concerned about. And I'll bring up the stipends. I think that's being discussed tonight. I personally, don't feel necessarily strongly about having stipends, but I am concerned about the amount that you're asking for. And but I believe that this can go to the voters. Am I correct on that? Can you at least answer that? Is this, if it's approved, does it go to the voters? Can anyone answer that right now?
The process,
the
sorry,
process is,
in
okay.
counselor comments, I'll answer.
Okay.
Not supposed to answer that.
Well, you can if it's a quick question. So I just want to talk, you know, about the zoning, but I had those questions. Please talk about the CBDS, and let's just make the flags automatic so we don't have to be going before the council every year to get approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else care to speak? Welcome.
Tim Fitzgibbons, 238 South Drive. And I really just wanted to get up to thank you, Mr. Moore, Mr. President, for your 3 years here on the council and your tremendous leadership this past year. It's been a great year for Bridgewater, and we can put most of that at your feet. whether you like it or not. And I certainly appreciate you stepping up and serving, and hope that in the future, your life comes to such a point where you're able to come back and serve the town again, because you have been a great public servant. And speaking of great public servants, I've known Dennis Gallagher for 30 years, almost. And he's done everything in the town of Bridgewater. And Dennis, it was a pleasure to serve with you on the advisory board back in the day. It was a pleasure to serve with you on the town council. You've always kept in your heart what's right for the town of Bridgewater, as everyone on this council does. I see it all the time in your meetings. And I appreciate that so much. So thank you, and best wishes in your future.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening, counselors. Thank you for all that you do. I do appreciate that. Jane Callahan, 335 Grange Park, and I'm here to support the Pride flag as well as the Juneteenth flag. In addition to Juneteenth celebration here in Bridgewater, this is a celebration of a milestone, significant point in the history of the United States, and I would love to see the town of Bridgewater be happy for these people and celebrate with everybody. So please represent me in your favorable vote for those two things. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else care to speak? Oh. Welcome.
Hi, Jim Slavin, 63 Eagle Trace. I came here because I had heard there might be some opposition to the raising of the Pride flag and the Juneteenth flag. I'm not hearing any of that, and I just want to weigh in and say I've been here. I'm in my 40th year in the town. It just keeps getting better and better. I really do applaud the town council in their efforts to make this feel like an inclusive community. And I think that both the Pride flag and the Juneteenth flag signal that, and it's really a great town to be in. So thank you all.
Thank you. Would anybody else care to speak? Okay, I see no additional public comment. Seeing no additional comment, we will close agenda item D.
Mr. President?
Yeah.
Quick question. Are there more chairs back there?
That is a
There's no. Just figured I'd ask.
there's one right there.
Can we open windows?
Yeah,
Really?
can we open them?
So we're locked in here like a cell? Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to open a window. Okay, our apologies. I think we are stuck with the heat, and unfortunately, I do not think we have extra chairs. Our apology for that. We will move ahead with item E, appointments. We have no appointments this evening. So that brings us to item F, hearings. I believe we have 3 hearings this evening. The first is agenda item FA, proposed zoning amendment ordinance D FY24 004, Central Business District and Form-Based Code. This is a continued public hearing. We did open public comments at prior hearings. This is one of a few that we've extended. And so we will start off this evening with a public comment period. We do ask, if you are commenting publicly, that you try to bring new information. If it is a comment that you've shared in the past, we have heard that. So we do ask that we try to limit public comment to new comments. But I would welcome anyone who would like to speak about the form-based code zoning amendment to approach the podium. Okay. Oh, yep. Welcome. Please state your name and address.
Since no one else is, Janet Hanson, Pleasant Street, Bridgewater. I know you all got my long essay of letters. I would love to read that out loud, but that would take more than 3 minutes. I have, besides the question about the CDS, but for the CBDR, my comments are, I was wondering, if there's anything about wetlands in there, like what's the process? I didn't see anything in the checklist unless I missed it. How is that looked at if, because I know down at Roach Brothers, there's wetlands back there, so if something was to be built, how is that incorporated into the process? I would like that. I do feel that more committees should be involved in the review of the checklist and the process. I know it's written that the planning board will review it, but the CDD would be the one to give the approval, but it doesn't say that they have to listen to what the planning board may be recommending if they have some comments that they don't agree with. I hope there's some balance there and not just one person deciding. Again, I want to know who the staff is. But I think planning board, historical committee, Concom, whatever's appropriate, there should be more than just one person deciding this. People that are in committees that are residents of this town. And I am concerned about, I'll say it again, that where CBDR starts on Broad Street, it should be down lower. It's too close to the town and there's too much potential. I know that you have to have a certain amount of squareage to build those 5-story buildings and 4 stories, but I don't see anything that's stopping anybody from tearing down. If somebody wanted to actually buy a whole bunch of land there and tear things down, what is stopping anybody from building those high buildings by how it's written? And you may say that no one's going to do it, but if it's in there, you can't stop it. So you have to be very careful. If you put something in there thinking, well, no one's going to do it, you need to think about, go beyond that and say, what if somebody does it? Or do we have something to stop it? And I just want to know what the recourse is like, do we allow any type of business going in these places? Are there zoning restrictions? I haven't heard that. They do a checklist, but do we have any control of actually what necessarily goes in there? Is there zoning still apply for what kind of businesses can go in there? And I am concerned about the number of apartments in there. It's just, there's going to be traffic no matter what. You can't be expecting only the people that are in those buildings are going to be walking. That's to say that nobody from the other side of town wants to go visit those businesses that are coming into those new developments because there'll be traffic there. So that has to be addressed. I just like to have it toned down, and I'm hoping that there will be some amendments. And I also want to know, one other question is, if this gets approved, when can, and somebody wants to make a change, is there a time frame where the change can be made, or does it have to wait 2 years? Does it have to wait 5 years, or can it be done at any time? That's very important to know. And I could go on, as you know, but I just hope some more people will speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe a question to our town attorney. In the course of a hearing, if we are asked a question and we do know the answer, do we
You can
answer?
engage during the public hearing because it's been properly noticed,
Okay.
right? So there's no open meeting issue because you've noticed this, the issue is in front of you, and there's been plenty of opportunity for someone to have noticed that it would be before you today, so you're fine engaging.
Great. So
during this.
I think a few things, and I'd look for confirmation of this, but if there is wetlands, those sorts of things, those still go through the normal process that wetlands would go through. The idea for this zoning is where building is allowed, instead of having a big open window where they could come with any idea and it kind of goes through the process, we have predetermined the types of buildings that we want to go there. And we did that because we thought that those buildings would help improve the town, would help contribute to taxes, would help beautify the area, would create walking spaces. So all of this, the idea behind a form-based code is to tell developers what we want instead of having all of them bring ideas to us over and over again that may or may not fit. And the rest of the processes for conservation, those sorts of things still apply. There was a question about if it passes this evening, could this zoning be amended in the future? My understanding is yes, zoning, is a document, a set of codes that this body votes on. So in the future, if leadership decides to change direction, that, you know, like many of the other things in the town, this body would do that. Oh, sorry. Yes, it can be changed in the future. Zoning can be changed. The town council has the ability to update zoning. There's obviously a process that goes through. But the same way that we're changing something that people before us created, people after us will have the ability to, you know, evolve the zoning over time. Another question for our town attorney. If we have another counselor that wants to contribute to the answers, can we do that before council comments? Okay.
Yep. Actually, I was through the president to to the town attorney or Mr. Dutton. I think that there was a specific question though around the 2 years. So perhaps if we could just understand for the benefit of the group what the 2 years.
The
is
issue of 2
related to.
years is applicable to a zoning amendment that you all reject. So under the law, if a zoning amendment comes before your body and you reject it, you vote it down, you have to wait 2 years before that same zoning or something like that zoning comes back before you. There is no other 2-year limitation other than that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Good clarification. Thank you. Welcome.
Ray Ajemian, 221 Aldridge Road. Up until January, I was a member of the planning board, and during that time, we did look at the form-based code which came before us. We had hearings on it, and just as a summary, we voted to go ahead with it. We voted to send it to the council to approve it. As I said, indicated earlier, people had some questions, which is normal. But in general, I believe, if I'm speaking for the planning board, we felt this is a step forward, that the town needs something better to revitalize the central business district, and this is a way to do it. Is it going to be perfect? We don't know, but we at least have to try. So I just want you to be aware that the planning board did approve to send it to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any additional public comments? Yep, welcome.
This is, again, to reiterate my questions about the grants. I have not heard any answers yet this evening, all those questions I posed on the grants. Those are, again, what are the grants for? Can we see the specs? How much money do we get versus how much Bridgewater puts up? And so forth. So I hope we'll get answers on that, follow up on that. Second thing I wanted to point out, which is new, and that is that many of the committees meet on Zoom when a lot of people are at work and so forth. It would be better if we had meetings in person, and the Zoom meetings were started because of COVID. COVID is over. So we should go back to in-person meetings. If they do Zoom meetings, then the alternative would be to have the committee do a report of what its findings are, and then have the chairman come and report to you folks so the folks at home can hear the report.
I just want to make sure, is that relevant to the hearing, or is that a public comment? If it's a public comment, I would just ask that we maybe hold it to the public comment period at the end.
You're right, Mr. Chairman, and I think that the committee input has not at this point been up to what's needed for the public to feel comfortable. And if we were hearing from the committees on it, I think we would be in a better position. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Would anybody else care to speak? Did you want to?
Yeah.
Counselor Gallagher?
If I could, Mr. President, I just, the resident asked, some direct questions. I think it's fair to try to clarify, as was said last time, because it concerned me as well. So it has to do with the grants that we may be denied if we do not act on this. And what was told us at the last meeting is that if we do not act on this, I don't remember if there was a date certain, but soon, that grants that we currently have in the queue to be approved could or would be denied. So is that true? And secondly is, if this is voted down, I could see that perhaps happening. But if we're still debating it or discussing it or putting it together, then I would think that they would not be denied. So I'm just trying to get a clarification on that as the resident asked and deserves.
Maybe if I could defer to Director Rulli.
Not a simple answer.
Right.
A couple things. It was mentioned with respect to compliance, the town has until December 31st, 2024 to be in compliance with the MBTA legislation. If we were not in compliance by that date, there is the potential that funds that we've received to date, we might have to pay back or give that money back. The May date that has been referenced is for fiscal year 24-25 grant period through the One Stop program. That application specifically asks, have you submitted a plan to the Attorney General's office and the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities? We can't submit those grant applications unless we can check the box that we have submitted a plan for review. And at this point, we don't have a plan to submit for review. As to specific grants that we are submitting, there are several that we're considering. Typically, the one-stop grants do not require a match from the town. Oftentimes, they require, if there was a match, 25% is typical. But in my experience in the 14, 15 months we've been here, we've got 100% funding through these grants. So what I'm suggesting is that things like MVP grants that we would use for acquisition of development rights and conservation easement at Hanson Farm, that will not go forward this year. So, I mean, the risk we run, there's two pieces, is that we can't submit for the next funding cycle because we don't have a plan in if we don't approve this. And the second risk we run is if we don't have a plan approved by December 31st of 2024, there's a chance that money that we've gotten, as an example, we've received an earmark to do pedestrian and traffic improvements in Central Square, that money might have to be paid back. And that's what happened in Milton and other communities. So I hope that answers your question.
Just to follow up, if I could, I believe at the last meeting, correct me if I'm wrong, that something has been submitted, though, to the state for some sort of review. I thought you had mentioned.
We had the preliminary plan that
Okay.
did not have the amendments that we had talked about
Right.
at the last meeting, has been reviewed by the Attorney General's office. That's the first step in the approval process. That will have to go back to the Attorney General's office because we've added some minor sections. As Mr. Dutton put in his memo back then, we don't see those to be detrimental to the approval process. But it will have to go back to the Attorney General's office, and then ultimately it has to go to the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Robinson?
I'd like to offer some follow-ups as well. So you said we don't have a plan.
We don't have a plan that's been submitted.
So what-
This is what you're voting on tonight is the
so
plan.
this is,
Yeah.
so this is an ordinance, but it's not an entire plan, is it? What else is required to be submitted with
This
it?
ordinance in its entirety is the plan.
Okay. All right. Just want to make sure that that's clear, because you just said we don't have a plan, but
We
this
don't have
is
a
the
plan submitted. I'm sorry if I was not specific
But then
about
you
that.
also just said you submitted the preliminary plan, which
We
was
had
this, which was this
previously for
ordinance.
review. But we do not have
Okay.
a final plan submitted to both the Attorney General's office and the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities.
Gotcha. Yes. Okay, thank you. I just want to help clarify because plan, ordinance, legislation, we want to make sure that we're all talking about the same thing. And then these one-stop grants, what are those specifically funding for us?
So in terms of grant funding that we can potentially lose, I think it's a pretty broad spectrum. The state has a wide array of grants that we're the beneficiaries of, or all cities and towns are the beneficiaries of. So in terms of the one stop, there's a whole host of them under that sort of category. And I'll just name a few: community planning grants, downtown initiatives, brownfield development, site readiness programs, underutilized properties, real estate technical assistance. So there's a lot of technical assistance, land use planning grants, a lot of planning, which is covered under the one stop. More importantly for us, MassWorks grants, which are actual monies that we use to build capital, whether it be reconstruction of Elm Street, for which we received $3 million. We would be at risk of losing municipal vulnerability preparedness grants. We're in the process of applying for upwards of 2 million plus there. We are the beneficiaries of loan forgiveness on state revolving funds. The governor's indicated that those could be at risk for towns that are not in compliance.
Wait, sorry, loan forgiveness for what funds?
Loan forgiveness for state revolving Clean Water Trust funds, water and sewer projects through a revolving loan program that the state runs. And we are the beneficiary of that. In fact, later in your agenda, you're potentially voting water and sewer rates, which actually are not the worst case scenario because we were the beneficiaries of about $11 million in either interest, zero interest, or loan forgiveness on the principal balances of those. So that just gives you sort of a broad, but it is a very broad array. The governor, although it hasn't been translated into writing, the governor has indicated that potentially Chapter 90 and Chapter 70 funds could be at risk. And for those that, just to remind folks, Chapter 70 funds education. The Bridgewater Rainham Regional School District is the recipient of almost $30 million worth of annual funding from Chapter 70. Chapter 90 is road repair money, and we get about 700,000 annually for road repair money through the Chapter 90 program. So those are just some of the types of grants and funding.
That's super helpful. Thank you. And then what was the deadline specifically?
We have grant deadlines of Friday
Okay.
for one particularly large grant. And then they're staggered throughout the balance of the year.
Okay. Thank you. Because I could have sworn there was a date this week that we talked about last time. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Just to follow up, so there is one grant due this week. The letter of expression for One Stop is due on the 30th, and the application period for One Stops is from May through June.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Lindy?
Specific question on the one that's due Friday. What is the amount for that grant?
It's probably around $2 million.
Great. Thank you. Okay, let's go back to public comment if we could. Would anybody else from the public care to comment? Yeah, please.
Annette Delano, Chase 60 Old Farm Road. I moved here in 1988, and I've seen this town change immensely since then, mostly for the good. The neighborhood that I live in wasn't there probably 20 years ago, I don't know. I do have some reservations about this, but I think it should be something that the town moves forward with. It's progression, and we need to just move with it and hopefully attract better families. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Would anybody else care to speak? Yep, welcome.
Good evening. My name is Donna Jewell, 50 Keith Place. I came here tonight because I've been following both the CBD revitalization and the MBTA. What I strongly urge you to consider tonight is separating the two issues when you vote. I think they're two entirely different issues, and one is hurting the other. There's a lot of misconception in the town. There's a lot of new information coming out in regards to the MBTA. I think it's a totally different animal. We see in the news and we talk to other towns and know that towns like Milton, and as recently as last night, Marshfield, voted against moving forward with that. I'm not saying we should vote against moving forward, but I'm saying we should take the time to educate one another. There is all kinds of new information coming out. I think it's hurting the public's view of the revitalization of downtown, I know the people who've commented to me that I'm negative about the revitalization. I am not. I think the new CBD code, offers a lot of great things. I think the design standards are outstanding. I think the expedited permitting is terrific. It's going to allow developers to say, yes, I want to go through this list. I agree with how you want me to design and build and what you're requiring of me. And I want to go and I want to move quickly. That is the way we should operate. I've heard talk about the new proposal for the project on Broad Street. What I hear and what I've seen of that, I think is fantastic. And I think would revitalize our downtown immensely. What I disagree with is getting our town into a situation where we are obligated to consider or move forward with 1,401 apartments. I don't think we're ready for that on many levels. I don't think we have enough information about the grants. I understand that some grant money is tied into that, but I think we need to look at a complete calendar and see what we have to decide when and what amount of money we may give up, what it's for. We owe it to ourselves, we owe it to the community, even if it's a 30-day extension, and not to vote until the end of May, maybe on this. I know there's some June deadlines on grants. I've gone to Mr. Rulli's meetings, I've gone to Mr. Dutton's meetings. It's been a lot of information to try to absorb. But I think we owe it to ourselves and the community. We could be making a huge mistake with the MBTA. I don't think we're making a mistake with the CBD codes, the whatever we're going to call it, the form-based code. I don't think that's a mistake. I do think the 5 stories is a mistake, but I'm probably beating a dead horse and you don't want to hear comments on that again. And I do think we should consider having a broader vote on the application with the planning board, maybe the zoning board, and the CED each having a couple of people that vote. But if you could all even consider for 2 seconds separating the MBTA, I think would be doing our community a great service. We don't know what that could lead to down the road. There's too much unknown and constantly changing information coming from the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else care to speak? Welcome.
Name is David Moore, 54 Flag Street. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on what Mrs. Jewell just said, but I am also a big supporter in separating these two issues. I'm up in the air as far as whether the MBTA issue is good for the town. I've got mixed emotions about it. I've heard both sides of the argument, but and I'm in favor of a lot of the stuff in the form-based zoning. I think there's some really good things in there we can do a lot with, but we all moved to this town because we liked what we saw. Last weekend, I drove up to Weymouth, and that is not one of the reasons why I have stayed in Bridgewater. I do not want to see 5 and 6, 5-story buildings right up to the side of the road. I know there's provisions that isn't going to be allowed, but 5-story buildings, in my opinion, do not belong in Bridgewater. There was nothing mentioned of 5-story buildings at the meeting at the Mitchell School. I was there. I went back. I looked over the tape. I saw some notes where people had commented, how tall are the buildings going to be? Well, 5 stories, in my opinion, is not Bridgewater. And I ask you to reconsider you vote on that and cut it back down to 4. Leave it what it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else care to speak? Welcome.
Hi, Susan Powers from Harvard Street. I have to agree with both of those last two. I think we need to separate these issues completely. Not everybody in this town agrees with the MBTA ruling. A lot of people aren't too thrilled with the state telling us what we have to do with our town. So I think we need to separate them and then talk about them. And what is the absolute drop dead deadline for meeting the MBTA's, the new law? I don't know what that date is. Do we know?
December 3rd.
Yeah.
Then what's the rush? What's the rush? If it's December 31st, why are we killing ourselves here? What's the rush? It's April. It's not November, it's April. We should be talking about this and you should be asking the people in the town what we want. This is our town too. How many of you have contacted any of your constituents and asked them what they want? How many? I see 3 hands. Wow.
I think all of us have had conversations. We
Yeah,
appreciate it.
well, I haven't seen one.
Okay. Counselor Chase? Would you,
Thank
do
you,
you have a?
Mr. President. I'd just like to make some comments with respect to the MBTA Communities Act. And as you're all aware, that is one component of the plan before us. In addition to form-based code, which is of our own volition, our own creation, and in addition to the downtown revitalization piece of the plan, which is intended to provide for, in the Central Business CBDR district, provide for mixed-use zoning, so commercial and residential combined. So there are those 3 components to the plan. Of the 3, the MBTA Communities Act is, as you know, a mandatory item. 177 municipalities in eastern Massachusetts that have access to MBTA services are required to adopt that plan, to adopt zoning that is consistent with the MBTA Communities Act. That act is intended to increase transit-oriented housing, okay? Not affordable housing, market rate housing, accessible by persons who utilize public transit. I retired a few years ago. Until I did, I commuted every day by the MBTA commuter rail here in Bridgewater into my job in Boston. I relocated to this town 36, closer to 37 years ago now. And I did so because I knew at the time that within a year or so, the Old Colony line was going to be reconstructed, reopened with service here to Bridgewater. And I knew that my future career depended upon a job in Boston, and I wanted to live in Bridgewater. So that is, and for many people I know, has been an essential feature enabling our ability to live in this beautiful community. Now, with respect to timelines, yes, December 31st is the date by which the communities who are subject to the act need to be in compliance. However, as you know, the town of Milton is in fact, has been sued by the Attorney General. And that case is before the Supreme Judicial Court. And the Supreme Judicial Court has already some time ago announced that the first action in that case will be oral arguments that will be made at some point in October. Now, with oral arguments being made in October, there's no reasonable expectation that any disposition of the case is going to be made before, perhaps even before the end of the year. The point is that for any community that needed to wait until October, November, December to implement a plan, assuming that the Supreme Judicial Court were to uphold the law, there would not be time to enact the zoning changes that it requires. It just wouldn't happen. And they would therefore be out of compliance and be subject to the kind of actions we've heard about tonight. The loss of grant funding revenue, the loss of perhaps other state aid as well, as Mr. Dutton has alluded. So it's a very significant issue. And frankly, there's a very simple way to look at it. And you may not like to hear it, but here it is. It's the law. And if Milton or some other community has chosen to be in violation of the law, that's their problem, and it will be a problem. With respect to us on the council, we've sworn an oath to act as in the best interests of the town. And there is no way on God's green earth that for us to approve an action that would knowingly be in violation of state law would be acting in the best interests of the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else care to speak? Welcome.
Good evening. Dave Gabriel, 22 Elmwood Crescent. I think one of the biggest concerns that the community has in regards to the MBTA, understanding better now from this gentleman about having to make sure you're in compliance so that we are then able in the future to get grant money. How much is it going to cost the taxpayer to move the MBTA from where it is to where it's proposed? Now, it's not just a matter of tearing that down and recreating what you have closer to Broad Street. There's more to it than that. And what kind of tax increase are we looking at in all when we're proposing that? Because understanding that you want to be in compliance, and I understand, I as a town, I want to be in compliance, especially with the potential grant money that these gentlemen are talking about. But to what cost? How much more are we going to be able to spend out of our taxes to make this happen when we don't think it's really necessary to begin with? That's all I have to say.
Councilor Gallagher, would you like to respond to that?
I mean, thank you, Mr. President. It was very clear, because the question was asked a few weeks ago, and if the residents here didn't hear that, I want the town attorney and Mr. Rulli to clarify that. We are not required, nor do we have to, and I certainly would not support the town paying for it, but we are not required, nor do we have to move the train stop. That's what we were told, and I just want that question cleared up once again.
That's correct.
Okay.
I mean, there are certain crossing improvements that need to be made that Keolis is doing in the next year. That could be coordinated with the relocation of the platform. You know, our anticipation is that any new development, if we established a DIF, a downtown improvement district, or a TIF, tax increment financing, that the increased revenue that the town is going to receive through these developments could be applied to public improvements, that could be applied to the relocation of the platform. We've looked at the 6 sites that we've identified for redevelopment. The increase in taxes, the increase in revenue that would bring to the town in the next 5 years is almost $1.8 million a year. So the idea is that none of this is being paid by current taxpayers, nor is it resulting in an increase in taxes. Potentially, it's going to be a reduction. As I mentioned at the last meeting, there are public infrastructure expenses by FY30 of almost $116 million. Whether we do any of this,
So
how is that going to get paid?
So just back up a little bit. You made a comment. So you said that there's some piece of some fee or something will go towards improvements, which could mean moving the train.
Right. I mean, we have the ability under.
What revenue? I guess what I'm trying to clarify.
So, I mean, if we look at, as an example, at Campus Plaza, the existing tax payments that we get at Campus Plaza now are almost $240,000 a year. If we were to redevelop that as is put forth in the plan, we're looking at almost $1 million a year annually in increased tax revenue.
So you're saying the difference could go towards moving the train?
That's correct.
Well, that's wrong.
Why is it wrong?
Because that should go towards our public safety and police. It should go towards the town.
Very specific that.
So in essence, we would be paying
Can I
for it.
finish?
Yeah, I guess so, but I didn't
I
like.
mean, I've talked about that increased revenue could go to public improvements.
You never said that till tonight,
That is not true.
but not at this form. You never said that.
I will encourage you to look at the tape. I've talked about public improvements, water, sewer, roads, potentially the relocation of the platform. I've been very consistent about that. I mean, that's what TIF funding is. That's what DIF funding is, to make public improvements.
I think.
If the state wants to move the train, the state can pay to move the train. I don't think any of our money should go towards that.
So I think,
We tried to clear that a few weeks ago.
I think we're sort of crossing definitions here, but I want to make it very clear. We have no intention to ever raise taxes to pay for a train relocation. Our intent is to make sure that if a developer comes in and wants to build in Bridgewater, that they're making contributions towards that effort if we end up doing it. This is, I will say.
I don't agree with that.
Well, not through taxes. I'm saying through a contribution, a
Not
mitigation
directly,
payment.
But the tax base for the new development, if Campus Plaza is ever redeveloped, that tax base they should help fund a new fire truck or something like
But
that.
I think what we're saying is that will be the decision of future council, right? There's nothing in this plan that requires us to make that decision, certainly not tonight. And in the future, with input from all the right people, that sort of project could be considered.
Correct.
Right. But not, it's not required to come in compliance with. the law,
Correct.
Right. Okay. Thank you for clarifying. Councilor Robinson?
And I think one point of clarification might be helpful for everyone here as well. There's a big difference between a developer giving a contribution versus a developer paying tax revenue. Or I'm sorry, not the developer, but the tax revenue. And I think that's where we need to be really clear about what funds would potentially be paying for any potential future move. I think, we say a lot of things, it gets said very quickly, and you're using different terminology that actually means very different things. So I think that that's worth clarifying for this,
Right.
this audience.
And thank you for that. I think you hit the nail on the head. Developers will come into communities and offer mitigation payments or discuss or negotiate with towns mitigation payments in order to offset impacts that their development may cause. They also pay an increase, presumably, an increase in tax on that particular property. We refer to that as new growth in the municipal world. So we are not talking about funding anything with new growth or with taxes, as you point out. Anything, infrastructure improvements, we'd be looking at paying for with either state money or developer mitigation payments designed to mitigate a very specific issue.
Thank you. I think that's really important. Just to share as a point of comparison, in my professional career, I worked for a very large retailer that did developments in Boston, and they would pay for road work, repairs and infrastructure to make sure that they could build their shopping plazas. So that is, I think, an example of what we're trying to explain here in terms of how we could potentially fund these large infrastructure moves. So thank you.
Just want to clarify one thing. And that's where I will agree with you, Mr. Rulli, is that you did say you would look for developers to pay in mitigation towards services like that. But what I was hearing initially was that if they renovated or in a new tax growth, I was hearing that money would be used as well. So that's where I wanted that clarification, that if their value of their property goes from $200,000 a year to $1 million a year in tax growth, that will stay with the town. If they choose to contribute towards mitigation for improvements in our downtown, that's separate and above and beyond that.
And that would be a decision of
That I heard you
council
say
as
before.
to what you wanted to do with that additional tax revenue.
Right.
And maybe if I could just add a few additional things. You mentioned the tax revenue, obviously from the real estate, but the idea here, and I said this last week, so I won't get on my soapbox again, but the idea here isn't just to build houses, it's to create an economic engine so that whatever businesses move in there actually have customers. Because without the customers, we're going to end up with the same thing 10 years from now. We're going to have a bunch of abandoned buildings that were a great idea, but no one went to. And this idea that, all of a sudden people are going to start driving in, that isn't the model that's been proven. So I know for many, information is new. For us, we've been looking at this for 3 years. We've looked at other areas. We've looked actually in other states to see how did they revitalize their downtown area. And the things that didn't work were the one restaurant that everyone wanted. Middleborough is a great example. We actually spoke with people from there. Like, did that restaurant revitalize? Not really, right? So the idea is to bring in enough people that at the end of their day, they might walk to the local coffee shop and shop there, or they might go to the convenience store in the corner, or they can walk up the street with their kids and do something at some store there that appeals to kids. That's the idea. And so the resident count isn't just the MBTA. To be honest, I don't care if we move the train station. I think you would get more people in the businesses if you did. I like it, but that's not the idea here. The idea here is actually look at the math and get enough people to walk in those stores so that we don't end up with like this, which is like what we've always had. You know, I grew up here. That the downtown was thriving. I went to the bowling alley. That was the only place to go for miles around, and everyone went there. Now it's not the only place to go. No one goes there. You know, people don't shop. They go to services and experiences. That's the only retail that works. And so the idea of putting people near that is you create consumer for those businesses, and then we get the taxes. And I think when we talk about investing, the idea here isn't to pay for a train move. The idea here is to pay for all of the other stuff that we should have done in the past. We've got roads that need fixing. Everyone always talks about the water. We have to come up with a plan to raise the money to fix those things, or else we're going to have meetings like this every year, and the next thing is going to be PFAS, and everyone's going to say, how are we going to pay for PFAS? And then the next thing is going to be another sinkhole on Flag Street, and everyone's going to say, how are we going to pay for that? Like we're in this cycle right now that if we don't figure out a way to create an economic engine downtown, the cycle will not break. It's literally, I mark my words, every year there'll be some new thing we have to pay for because we haven't figured out a way to attract businesses to pay for it for us. And so I just want to make sure that part of the story is known. I recognize that a lot of the kind of press right now is around the 5-story buildings. The story here that started years and years ago is how do we pay for all of these things that Bridgewater needs? And how do we make sure that all of us in this room don't get tacked with every bill? Like that's the idea. And so this form-based code is the council's best idea of creating an economic system that will generate revenue. And it does mean some trade-offs. It means maybe it's 5 stories and not 4, because 5 stories actually creates enough foot traffic where 4 might not. Like there's thought that went into it. And I get it. And I support it there, but not in other areas of town. We want to kind of keep the outskirts of town to be Bridgewater, but we need an economic center. That's the idea. So it ends up coming back to the MBTA. That's like an opportunity for us. We were going to do this thing anyway, and all of a sudden someone came along with a bunch of money that says, hey, your thing actually matches our thing, and if you do it in this time frame, you get some money, right? So it fits. And so I think, for me, and it's my opinion, certainly I think others, might have their own, but that's the idea. And so that's what I'm voting for tonight. I'm voting for something that will fix Bridgewater and give us revenue streams so that my kids aren't dealing with the same rundown buildings downtown. Like that's the idea. And people might have other methods for that. I hope you do. I hope Bridgewater continuously invents new ways to fix it, but that's the idea we have now. So, yep, Dr. Perry?
Mr. President, yeah, through you to either Mr. Dutton or Mr. Rulli. A couple residents have brought it up. Can you speak to the strategy of the form-based code being linked with the MBTA community agreement, as we have in the one document, and they're saying how we should separate it? What would your opinion of the strategy being that we had it together going forward?
So for my part, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Rulli, but for my part, I think Councilor Moore sort of outlined that pretty well. The MBTA communities is a law that came along. It does affect us, and we are required to comply. At the same time, we're looking at doing something great in the downtown area with zoning, and I think being able to tie those two together gives us a much better opportunity later on to avail ourselves of additional state funding and to have better communications with the state, or better discussions with the state about even additional funding that we are going to need to secure in order to fix a lot of our water issues. And in fairness, every town has water issues, but we know it's going to be over $100 million worth of water infrastructure work that has to be done over the next 10 years. We know that. So being able to merge those two satisfies the law. satisfies our desire to make some improvements in the downtown area, the kind of improvements that we want to see in the downtown area, and then the additional benefit of sort of qualifying for additional state funding.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else from the public care to speak? Yep, welcome. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, John Donna, 261 South Street. I appreciate everything that was just said about revitalizing the town. Like, this might be an opportunity. The MBTA this provision, this law might provide an opportunity for Bridgewater to get some money to help with our issues. But the state, but hearing all of these, the funding issues that are going to be repealed by the state if Bridgewater doesn't comply, it just angers me. It's like, it's not like the state is here to be our friend to help us develop the town. There's like, you do this, or we're going to take all these grants back. You're going to have to pay us back for everything. And it seems like it's being forced down the community of Bridgewater, as was said previously, rather than Bridgewater deciding for ourselves. And I like all the comments that I heard about, keeping Bridgewater as much as it is, right? Obviously, this plan would change it, which does create a problem. But I just, the way the state comes here and just bullies the town, like, you're going to do this or we're going to bankrupt you. And I just think that's just because you live in a town that's on a commuter rail. What gives the state the right to just hold something over your head and withdraw funding for millions of dollars, as we just heard, on all kinds of issues? And it just bothers me. I appreciate everything the council does, and I certainly appreciate the comments I've heard about their concern for what's going to come. But I wish we could do this, or the council could do this without this, carrot or the stick thing from the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else care to speak? Yep.
David Basowitz, 5 Library Place. I might be the only one up here saying this today other than Councilman Moore, but the MBTA station is an asset that Bridgewater has, and it is an opportunity for our town. The point is to bring in residents and business and to make money, and for everything we do to chip away at that, when we keep the MBTA where it is, when we lower the levels of the buildings, eventually it'll just be new businesses with no new residents, and that won't do anything. Every step that we talk about, every step that we take that takes away from the revitalization hurts us in the long run. And again, like Councilman Moore said, I think that the MBTA is an opportunity that the town of Bridgewater has, and we should take advantage of it rather than hide it in the back of Bridgewater State. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, welcome. Sure.
Hi, Amanda Napier, 316 Main Street. I also want to speak in a similar vein as the last speaker and to disagree with some of my neighbors about the MBTA plan. Chair Moore, I appreciated what you said about the vision of revitalization that this belongs to. And I think that, rather I would invite people to think about what the state is offering and demanding in return is not so much a relationship of force, but symbiosis, because we are part of Massachusetts. That's the larger community we belong to. So absolutely, we should take advantage of an opportunity to revitalize the economics of Bridgewater, and also to benefit from the state in that, and also to help extend the line to the South Coast and to make our community more accessible and more welcoming. In addition, so like I hear people talking about, I want to keep Bridgewater the way it is. I appreciate the nostalgia and the warmth of what it has been for people to grow up in Bridgewater, but the other side of that I hear is, hey, that the downtown is needs revitalization, that it's sort of like a sleepy post-industrial Rust Belt-esque space right now, and that's only going to keep going downhill if we don't do something about that. In talking about keeping the town the way it is, I also hear some racially coded dog whistle in that, and I, for one, want to say that I would like for Bridgewater to be a more racially and economically diverse place, and I think that the MBTA can be a big part of that and part of the downtown revitalization plan. So I think we should really go for it and embrace that and bring the old Bridgewater we love into the new Bridgewater that can be bigger and embrace all of us and something really generative for everyone.
Thank you.
How you doing?
You did
Sorry,
the
Matt.
neck
He's
thing.
tried
Yeah,
a few
Matt.
times.
All right, you're definitely next.
Please. Yeah.
Alan Harvey, 75 Oak Ridge Lane. I'm all for revitalizing downtown. The problem I have is 1,400 apartments, and nobody's talked about the extra parking space because not everyone's going to take the train and walk home. I'm sure you didn't take your bike to the train. You have a vehicle in your driveway. You can count on 2 cars for every one of those apartments, and then we haven't even talked about the kids that go to school from those apartments. We had the same problem at Viva and Lakeshore. They said there were no kids up there, and we have like 3 buses that pick kids up there. So we have a problem with the number of kids coming to the school system. We also haven't addressed the water supply issue in town, and we haven't addressed this sewage treatment plant. Why don't the cart's before the horse? Why don't we fix the problems we have? That's all I'm gonna say.
All right. The gentleman in the back. Reserve the podium. Thank you for your patience. Welcome. Yeah.
Matt Holmes, 80 Old Farm Road. I just want to come up and reiterate, I think Councilman Moore put it perfectly just a little while ago. If we don't do something, then you're just going to leave it the way it is. That's where we're at. So the same people that complain about the vacant lots, what I call the missing teeth of our fabric in the downtown area, well, if you're not willing to take this first step, then nothing's going to change, because there's not going to be a business that just comes in and says, I'll buy that and just put my business there and pray it works. It's not going to happen. So I hate to tell you that the residential component to this is an important part to attract people to buy this up and develop it. If you don't get the residential part and you don't get the foot traffic, then a business won't come in, they won't put their business there, and it won't continue to create a downtown fabric. We can also, instead of developing the downtown, we can continue to clear cut lots on the outskirts. Remember, downtown Bridgewater is a very small part of Bridgewater. And lately what's been happening, and it's not the town's fault, it's developers coming in with 40B, but clear cutting lots, taking out wooded areas and putting up 300 houses. I would rather see a more compact, vibrant downtown than clear cutting the outskirts, beautiful farmland, trees, so on and so forth. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else care to speak? Yeah.
Ray Ojemian, 221 Aldridge Road. Just to clarify a few things. One, regarding mitigation, I invited you to the Arbor Day on Friday. I just want you to be aware that the tree committee is entirely funded by mitigation. We are not using any town funds right now. It's entirely mitigation from developers who cut trees down. Secondly, the Perkins property has been approved across from Roche Brothers. And according to the present zoning, it requires 30% business. They said they can't put in 30%, and we agreed at the planning board that it's simply, they need more residents in the center of town in order to have businesses. So we cut the number down, to percentage down. Third, the federal government, the state government has rules and regulations. They tell us to do certain things. We may not like it. We can go to court to try to fight it. But they have the right to try to do what they think is best. And the state is saying we need more residential apartments near train stations, which assuming that that's true, which I think it is, then we simply have to learn how to deal with it. It doesn't mean it's going to be disaster by building, and we're not talking, if they say 1,400, we're not actually talking about 1,400 units. So all I'm saying is what was just said by the previous speaker, we need to do some sort of change. And this is, I think, a step forward, which I think you should probably vote for. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Yep. Oh,
Oh, we're not.
all right. I think we have one more comment. Welcome.
Good evening, Sheila Whitaker, 45 Brookside Drive. So this was very informative. Thank you so much for sharing kind of the economic engine strategy and the compliance. And it sounds like we have to move forward in some way, shape, or form. I'm not a big fan of the 5 stories, but it sounds like you've run the numbers. So that's great. I guess I'm questioning, what have you considered in terms of the impact on public safety with all these people coming to this town? This area is not remotely safe for all these pedestrians that won't be driving, but will be walking around the town. And then what have you considered the impacts on the school? Because we thought the NIP wasn't going to bring families, and it did, the apartments across. It's had a huge impact on our school system. So I love the forward thinking, but are we forward thinking about those things as well?
I can respond to that. So all great questions and appreciate them. So this is part of a larger sort of strategy. So the council for a couple of years has been talking about a few different things, the roadways plan. We talk about funding for education. We actually looked at the numbers to understand the impact from the access developments and others. It's actually, the school system has been relatively stable. But we did consider those things. Not to say that you won't see adjustments, but I would just say in the context of this meeting, and I'm happy to follow up after, this is one of a few different steps. There's a design to help with pedestrian safety downtown. We have some funding actually for some bump outs, even those sorts of things. There are considerations for the roadways. Public safety is a consideration. So it's all part of a larger system, a very delicate system that we have to do right. But if we do it right, they all sort of grow together. So that's the idea. This is one piece of a somewhat larger puzzle. But it's a great question. I encourage people with ideas about those other pieces, remain involved and help us, get those to fruition too. Is there anyone else from the public that would care to speak? And can you hear me in the back? I apologize. Earlier, I think, can everyone hear me okay? All right, great. Yep, welcome.
I'll keep it short. I don't want people to think that the state's picking on Bridgewater, telling us what to do. The reason they came up with the number is because the housing is necessary. There's not enough housing in Massachusetts, period. I start a house, 550, 7% interest. Not a lot of people can do that. So it's coming whether you like it or not. It'd be nice to control where it goes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Name and address.
Oh, sorry. Excuse me, sir. What was your name and address? Oh,
Jim Balsamo, 89 Stepney Lane.
great. Thank you. Okay, would anyone else care to speak?
Donna Jewell, 50 Keith Place. I'd
Yep.
just like to ask a question. I don't know if you can answer it here or not. With the MBTA, have we consulted with an attorney that specializes in the MBTA law and state law? I do understand that the state can issue mandates, but the legalities of whether they can withhold certain funding or disallow us from applying for certain funding or requiring different pieces, I think really needs to be looked at with an attorney that specializes in that if we have not done so already. I'm not against the growth. I think Bridgewater needs to grow and develop. I hear people tell us from the town, I agree, that the spending dollars in Bridgewater leave Bridgewater. They go elsewhere. We have to my own money goes elsewhere because there aren't many places to shop or go to for entertainment. So we already have a good base for that, with people that will support business that comes to town. The ridership on the MBTA has declined, and it's declining every year. I don't know if we think everybody in an apartment is going to come and ride the T. I don't know those answers, but I do think we should, if we haven't already, consult with an MBTA specialized attorney.
Thank you. And typically, we don't comment publicly on legal matters. I'll say it for you, but it's a great question. Thank you. I will also add, I have heard a few different times the idea that the ridership on our specific line has declined. I actually commute every day from there to Boston, and in the evening it is standing room only. So it is a fully, it is one of the more frequently used lines. So I would just encourage people, if you're researching MBTA usage, look at this line, kind of specific. Yeah. So, okay. So any additional comments? And thank you all for sharing your thoughts and ideas with us. Okay. I don't see any. So the way that hearings work is I'm going to ask sort of two more questions. I think we've heard the feedback already, but you're certainly welcome to voice additional comments. The questions involve people speaking in favor or opposition. If you have already kind of spoken in favor or opposition, don't feel obligated to speak again. But the first question that is required as part of a public hearing is, does anyone from the public wish to speak in favor? I think obviously we're taking into account the fact that some people already have. Does anyone from the public wish to speak in opposition? Oh, sorry, did you wish to speak in favor or in opposition? Okay, great, thanks. So speaking in favor, just to, yep.
Janet Hanson, Pleasant Street. I'm not in favor of it. I just want things looked at closely and tweaked. I brought up several things that I think are of concern. We can't just, I don't think it's, the way it's written right now, there's a lot of questions, and we have to be careful of loopholes or things like that, like I've already mentioned. And again, I'm concerned about the CBDS. I'm hoping you guys will discuss that, but I'm not necessarily opposing it. I am in favor. I understand it all. I do feel that the MBTA needs to be separate. So that's what I just want to be, I'm asking if you can tweak it. I'm assuming that you're going to discuss it, and maybe you can tweak things and then pass it. So that's my feeling.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Would anybody else like to speak in favor? Okay. Would anybody like to, from the public, does anyone from the public wish to speak in opposition? Okay. Oh, yep, please.
Leanne Joyce, 115 Leggy Street. I just want to speak on behalf of my children. I have 4 children in this town. I'm just worried about the schools, and, you know, the student to teacher ratio is already a big issue. I have my oldest daughter over at BSU, and I have 3 other children in the Williams, the middle, and the high school. Downtown needs to be revamped. It's an eyesore, and I think everyone can agree on that. Having some change businesses is an awesome idea. It looks horrible. I think we all want more. I'm not so sure the 5-story apartments above it is the way to go. There's plenty of beautiful homes for sale in Bridgewater. It's a great town. I've been here 16 years. I'm really, really worried about how it's going to affect our children, how it's going to affect traffic. You know, everything downtown is fairly busy. On a half day, you have a lot of kids up here. There's a lot of movement. If the MBTA being moved to the center of town goes hand in hand with this vote, then what are we voting on? Or what are you rather voting on tonight? Because it seems like it's already a, you know, there's going to be laws broken, and it's already a done deal decided that it's going to be a yes, because it's breaking the law as far as the MBTA is concerned. They're 2 separate entities, what's going on downtown and what's going on with the MBTA moving into the center of town. We have a great commuter rail system. It's not something that may be more beneficial downtown, is it so residents can now walk from their apartment building, and you're talking How many? I mean, if there's 1,400 apartments there, how many families, how many kids? And they're all walking, people are using the commuter rail. People use the commuter rail every day where it is. It's an excellent system. I worked for the MBTA for 30 years. I was a transportation operator on those trains. And I will tell you, where I've worked in the city my entire life, you don't want that downtown in Bridgewater in this community. You just don't. We have a great commuter rail system now. It's easy access for everybody that lives around here and people that live in towns that abut Bridgewater, come and use our commuter rail. I don't understand the benefit of it going downtown. And I just think you need to take into consideration how this is going to affect the children in this town. They are the ones that are being raised here. They're living here. It's going to affect them more than the rest of us in here. We're all, you know, out of school. Like I said, the student to teacher ratio right now it's not good. Our classrooms are crowded. We already have other towns. We have school choice. We have communities coming in, Taunton, Brockton. They're all up at the high school. It's packed. And you're going to have all these apartments coming in, new residential areas. Absolutely. Yeah, it's needed. You know, everybody's doing it. But again, this is a town. It's not a city. Cities have all that transit system and the commuter rail and train stations in the center of their towns because they're cities. Okay. You're going to have all these apartments coming in. People can go to the city for that. If you want to go live in the city and be near the train station, you can live in the city. You want to be in farm country, you come out to Bridgewater and raise your family like I have. This is affecting my children. Everybody in here that may be like over 40 or have older kids or don't have any kids or the kids are out of school, they're just, yeah, we need shops, we need restaurants, we need businesses. It looks awful down there, 100%, yes. Not sure this is the way to go. You have two separate entities tonight being tied into one vote. They go hand in hand. You can't have one and not the other. That's what I'm hearing. I don't think that's fair.
So I just want to clarify one piece of it. The moving of the train station isn't part of anything that we're voting on this evening. This evening is just the building code for down there. So I just want to make sure people understand that.
Information?
Yep.
When you're asking for public vote for not in favor, are you requiring us to come up and talk or just out loud?
Typically, we ask that you come up and just state your name, but I can hear you. Feel yeah. Okay. Thank you. And we have your name from earlier. I think you're welcome to speak in opposition. Yep.
I just, point, if you could clarify, please, I thought I heard you say, and I'm not sure I did, that you said that you're only voting on the CBD revitalization part, or are you voting on submitting the MBTA plan as well?
The legislation in front of us today is just the form-based code.
Okay, then I misunderstood. I
Yeah,
thought,
but to be used, wait, actually, let me make sure. Is there a clarification there?
The form-based, you have a zoning amendment that includes the form-based code, but also that puts you in compliance with the MBTA legislation. The
Right.
relocation, you're correct, the relocation of the platform is not mandated by the state. It's not included in this. As a development tool for transit-oriented development, it's something we're looking at. It may or may not happen, but that is not part of a mandate
Right.
from the state.
But the zoning we're voting on is about the zoning,
It will put you in compliance.
which is also compliant with MBTA.
That's correct.
So, okay.
okay, that's, I thought, I
Yeah.
may be misunderstood. I thought I heard you say we were only voting on the CBD codes.
I apologize. Yeah, I meant the moving of the train station.
Oh,
I've heard a
no,
few
the
people comment
moving,
about
to
that. I
me,
just wanted to make
that's
sure
an
we
issue
didn't.
for another time.
Yeah.
But the fact, I look at it as an MBTA issue of, are we submitting to the state where the MBTA exists today and the form-based code? So that is what's in front of the council today. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're voting on a form-based code that, if approved, would put us in compliance with MBTA.
And the overlay district as it exists now is where the platform is today.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Does anyone else from the public wish to speak in opposition? Okay, I see none. So the time is 8:39. I will now close the hearing. And I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, a second, any discussion?
What time would an amendment be in order?
We have a motion on the table. We could do a motion to amend. And it's a,
Okay,
I know the
so I'm going to
clarification.
make a motion to amend 9.8.41, determination of compliance is listed on page 10. It says page 31 and 96, okay? It said compliance with the town of Bridgewater FBC checklist will be determined by town staff. I want to amend with a recommendation from the planning board. I would
And that
respectfully
aligns
ask
with
for a second.
language later on.
Applies to language later in the document, but it makes it unclear if it's only in the later part and not the earlier
So
part.
this creates a common understanding of
Yes.
those clauses. Understood. Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second for discussion.
We have a second for discussion. Any discussion?
What was the language again, please?
It says determination of compliance. Compliance with the town of Bridgewater FBC, which is form-based code checklist, will be determined by town staff. That's where it stops. I want to add with a recommendation from the planning board. And I attended the public hearing that the planning board wanted that in. It's in later on in 9.8.422D, I believe.
It's pages 10 and
Mr. President.
12.
Just a point of order, that section is the town staff saying that the application was complete. It's not approving. That's why we have that language later in the ordinance that it would go to the planning board within 30 days. This is just to make sure that an application that has been submitted,
see.
it meets the requirements.
I see. Thank you for that clarification. So with that clarification,
I still wanted it.
so that would mean just the acceptance of the application, just that we receive
I
it.
want the planning board to see it from day one.
Okay, we have a motion to amend 9.8.4.1, adding the language at the end. So full language would be compliance with the town of Bridgewater FBC checklist will be determined by town staff with a recommendation from the planning board. And I think the original intention was to align that on page 12 with section 2.c, which says within a 30-day approval period, the planning board shall, actually, there's an earlier thing. Yeah, sorry, earlier than that, it says, beginning of the 30-day review period by the CED office, the submittals and plans for development shall be sent to the planning board for review at a regularly scheduled planning board meeting, which would be open to the public. Within the 30-day approval period, the planning board shall report its comments and final recommendation back to the CED. So the original intention was to make sure that those two things aligned. I think with the clarification, the action that's being amended is the receipt of that, not the processing of that. So is there any additional, so we have a motion and a second for that amendment. Any additional discussion?
Quick
Yeah,
comment.
Councilor Gallagher?
Thank you, Mr. President. I think that's a worthwhile addition to that section. It may not be needed or required, but let the planning board, respond and say, we don't need to, submit a recommendation, but at least it was submitted to them if they choose to or not. And later in the document, they do have more authority over this form-based code, but I don't see anything wrong with adding that to this section.
Okay, any additional, Dr. Perry?
Thank you. I mean, just based as it's written, and Mr. Rulli can comment after this, but again, I believe is the staff or, his office is reviewing to make sure all the paperwork is in compliance before going on to the next step of having it being reviewed by the planning board. So I don't know if the planning board needs to review it twice, which is what this might be creating, and they actually create a little bit more of a delay in getting things processed. So I'm a little concerned that this is adding, a twofold process that doesn't really need to happen.
Understood. So you're saying in this step,
I mean, they're just looking to see if all the i's are dotted and t's are crossed as far as the paperwork and. the
and this
check
forces
boxes.
the planning board to
Oh.
also look to see if all those.
Exactly.
Okay.
They're just determining if everything's in
Understood.
place. So I don't know if the planning board needs to get in on that aspect of things.
Makes sense. Yep, Counselor Robinson?
I definitely agree with Counselor Perry on that. I think it's excessive language that we don't need at that stage because of the way that the rest of that passage is written. The other thing too is I just want to remind this group, and hopefully this is to the benefit of the public as well. According to our town charter, the Director of Community and Economic Development serves to support the council and the planning board and the town manager. There is no nefarious plot here that he's going to be running rogue to just approve whatever he feels willy-nilly. And so we have to have a level of trust and expertise in his expertise. So I just want to put that there.
Thank you. And I would, I think, echo both of your comments about this. I think with the clarification, I do think it could introduce some confusion when the first step is just you have all 5 pages and there's only 4. We want to involving multiple teams, and that might be tricky.
It's no different now than when we get an application to the planning board, we get an application to the zoning board of appeals, we get an application to the conservation commission. We don't put things on the agenda unless all the paperwork has been filed. We're not taking any action on it. We're just making sure that we're meeting the filing requirements. That's all that is.
An administrative task.
Understood.
Could I just point of order on that?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I understand it right, if you're going to have a motion to amend to add language. So it says compliance with the Town of Bridgewater FBC checklist will be determined by town staff, and the current amendment states after recommendation by the planning board?
With a recommendation.
Recommend.
Yeah.
So I guess what I would want to be careful with in that circumstance is that seems like a ministerial task where essentially someone's looking at a checklist. And if the planning board looks at the checklist and determines that something isn't right on the checklist and then instructs an employee of the town to do something, I could see a whole litany of issues and charter issues associated with that. I can also see a whole litany of legal issues with oversight on whether or not a checklist is followed, because if the planning board then determines the checklist isn't followed, now we have an issue in town between the Community and Economic Development Director and the planning board. And I see there being a lot of possible issues with that. That would be my 2 cents on it. Obviously, you all take whatever approach you want to with this. But literally that particular part of this is a ministerial task. It is everything checked off on the checklist? And you're actually introducing something into it that could create litigation for the town. So I want you to consider that when you make your determination. I'm going to defend it no matter what you do. And you all get to vote that, and that's why you're in your chair and I'm in mine. But I think you should consider that. There are issues.
Where it might, as written, conflict with roles and responsibilities as mapped out in the
There could
town
be
charter.
charter issues with the fact that you could be conceivably saying that this board is now directing the task of this town employee. That's a problem
Understood.
within itself. But then there's a whole bunch of other issues with if the planning board doesn't like a project and they say, well, you didn't follow the checklist, and now they make a recommendation and we get sued on the underlying matter. Now I'm conflicted out. We're hiring attorneys for both the town and the planning board because the planning board's now said to the town, hey, these don't follow this check. It creates, I could go down this rabbit hole for quite some time. I just think you want to be,
Understood.
that seems like a minor amendment. That minor amendment has vast consequences.
Understood. Okay. Any additional discussion? So we have a motion to amend. We have a second to that motion. We've had discussion. I think we could move to a voice vote. All those in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Nay.
Nay.
Was that a nay?
Nay.
Okay. Okay, the nay, the motion is denied. Thanks. Okay, so that brings us back to our original motion. We did have a motion to approve. That was seconded. And we are at a point of discussion. Is there any additional discussion at the council? Yep.
I just want to speak
Councilor
real quick
McKinnon?
because I wasn't here last week. I do live on Spring Street, so I do have a lot of concerns that you guys have. I'm a fan of the form-based code, the MBTA stuff I don't really like. I mean, 25% of our town is state property, and for the state to come in here and try to push people around kind of does irk me too. Me personally, I don't think that this is about housing. When Charlie Baker put this in, he sped that new train line up about 10 years, and I really think it's just about making the MBTA profitable, but that's just my opinion. I do think that this should go through, as much as I'm conflicted on this, and it's a very big vote, but like I said, I live on Spring Street. I have the worries about my neighborhood, and I will be one of the first people that pays attention. Well, I'll be the person that's paying attention to the courts, and I don't see the state really winning many cases when it comes to taking money back from towns and denying grants. So I'll be paying attention to that because it is an ordinance, but I am for it today, and it's my only comments for now.
Great. Thank you, Councilor McKinnon. Yep, Councilor Lindy?
So last Thursday, I attended a concerned residents meeting. There were 40 people present at the meeting. I did ask the question, how many people, I'd like to get a raise of hands. It's not a scientific poll. How many people were in favor of 5 stories? Nobody raised their hand. Just so you know, I know we took a vote. I was against it. I am going to be really blunt. I don't trust the state. Okay? There is no guarantee of any grants. We can apply for them. There's no guarantee we're going to get them. BSC pays $45,000 a year to this town. That's a joke. Prison mitigation money went from 365 down to about 125. That's a joke. We pay for the privilege of having an MBTA station. And now we have a stick that's going to crush our heads if we don't go along with it. I haven't gotten one email or one phone call from anybody in favor of this. That's what I'm saying.
Yep. Yep. Councilor Chase?
Thanks, Mr. President. Just very briefly, I had made the point once before. I think it bears repeating in light of Councilor Lindy's comment with respect to grant funding. And at one of our meetings in March, we very quickly consolidated 5 votes for the purpose of expediency, just moving the vote along that evening. Those 5 votes, in each case, was a required acceptance by the town council on behalf of the town of grant monies from various sources and for a whole variety of purposes. The total of those grants, just during that one meeting, those 5 particular separate grants, totaled $550,000, over $500,000. That was just one recent instance where we approved the acceptance of grant funding. And over the course of an entire year, there's a tremendous amount of money that the town benefits from by virtue of grants. And you can be assured that the administration, the Healy administration, will in fact enforce that, that if you want to consider it a threat, to withhold grant funding from towns that are not in compliance, perhaps along with other municipal funding. So it's something that I think is far too dangerous to take to just accept it as we'll take our chances with it. I absolutely can't accept that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Gallagher?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll just wrap up what my thoughts are about this. And, you know, I'm inclined to support this, but I do have a lot of reservations like some of my colleagues do. But I do want to say this to, you know, with all due respect to Mr. Rulli and his team, the one thing that I really don't want to see going forward is our effort of approaching the Campus Plaza and kind of telling them or advocating to them, look what we did, now why don't you do this? That's not our role, and that should not be our role in the town in this particular case. If they come forward and say, oh, I understand you did this, now we want to do this, then I think you got to work with them. But I think from the get-go, from the beginning, I know your comments, you were here in the 70s and everything has stayed the same. Well, I don't think there's anything really wrong with Campus Plaza. I think it fits the needs of this and of the town pretty good. And perhaps with the Perkins Foundry development and the real proposal, I think that is out there regarding Broad Street, that Campus Plaza themselves might take a look at their portfolio with respect to bringing more businesses or solid businesses into that area or spruce up what they have. So I would just hate to see us be the ones to be going and say, look, I want you to do this. Let them come to us. I think we have a real proposal with Broad Street, and that's been one of my pet peeves as everybody's in this room for years. I want to see something done there. I think there's something there now. I hate to lose that opportunity. And even though the Perkins Foundry property project is not part of this was in the works way before this even came to the table, I think those two things alone will certainly change the character of our downtown, bring in what we really need. So, but I do think we should probably move forward with this to comply. But if we don't see any activity, if we don't see anything happening, or if the Supreme Court overrules this whole thing, then I think they should come back to the council for reconsideration and do away with it if that's the case. But I do think a lot of effort, Mr. Rulli, I applaud you and your team for working on this for well over a year. The planning board, hours and hours of meetings, and our discussions, and obviously what's most important is the public input that has been given throughout this whole process. So I just don't, that's what I have reservations about, but I think overall, I think I'll support this tonight.
Thank you, Councilor Gallagher. Councilor Murphy?
Yeah, I just had a question through you, possibly to the town attorney. My understanding on the ordinance is that we're voting on the form-based code, which in theory would put us in, or does put us in compliance with the MBTA law. But the ordinance itself makes no mention of submitting a plan to the state. So my question would be, why doesn't that submittal of a plan come before the council, and why is that not included in the ordinance?
I think those are two different issues. If I'm understanding your question, I think there's some confusion about when Mr. Rulli said earlier, submitting a plan to the state. What he's talking about, and correct me if I'm wrong, and really he should be the one speaking to this because he's the one that's already spoken to it. But I think what he was saying was the plan we're submitting to the state is the plan relative to the MBTA requirement or the legal requirement that we follow whatever laws are in place relative to MBTA communities. So this itself is that plan, right? So it's been previously submitted only in that prior to you all getting your final vote or approval, the Attorney General's office, who doesn't really oversee our process, but for in this particular circumstance, had to review it and give us feedback so you all could amend it accordingly. But there is no other plan. The plan is, and again, Mr. Rulli, correct me if I'm speaking out of turn, but the way I understood what he said earlier was the plan is the plan that needs to get approved by the state, showing that we are now in compliance with the statute relative to MBTA communities. And this is that plan, right?
I guess my question was, the act of submitting whatever plan it is doesn't need the council approval. The physical act of submitting the plan.
No, absolutely not.
Okay, thank
No.
you.
So all that's required is that we have an ordinance, which is what you're voting on. The form-based code is simply an ordinance in place that the terms of which fit under what the statutory framework now requires for communities within a certain distance of the MBTA, right? And that's it. So the ordinance is the plan, and it requires no further action of you all other than the approval of it should you choose to approve it. And then the rest of it is just ministerial in that, okay, now this is an ordinance that exists in the town of Bridgewater, so we're in compliance. And then you just continue to move forward. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I'm never going to correct you if you're
Oh,
wrong.
okay, good idea. So that's essentially the way the process works. If those were your questions, just kind of, seems like you were more of just asking the procedural process.
Yeah, correct. More along the lines
Yeah,
of the authority of
that's it.
submitting a plan or whatever it may
No,
be.
no, that's it.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Counselor McKinnon?
Through you to the town manager, and Mr. Rulli, if we aren't compliant, how do you think the talks are gonna continue or end when it comes to bringing our wastewater to the college? Probably die there, right?
Well, we've been in
Not even
conversation.
College, prison.
Yeah, I mean, we've been in conversations with the Department of Corrections, not with the university. The
the
timing is
same
good because of the fact that the Department of Corrections is under a consent order to make improvements to their plant. So what we've learned is that there's additional capacity there that could take the existing flow from the university. It potentially could take some of those neighborhoods in between the university and the prison. Our next step is to look at funding. The Department of Corrections cannot access federal funding. We can. They get their funding through DCAM. So once we have a scope in terms of what we think those numbers are, then we have to look at what the other infrastructure implications are. I mean, the right of way along the rail to get, the wastewater piping in. We're simultaneously in conversations on a regional water solution that could be part of this solution as well. I think this helps us in the negotiations in terms of, we've always taken the position, the MBTA legislation is coming from the state. The university is a state asset and the Department of Corrections is a state asset. So I do want to just, if I can, Mr. President, as I said at a previous meeting, there's problems with this legislation. I'm very clear about that. The requirement is that you, on paper, create 1,400 units of housing. The legislation is very specific that there's no expectation you're going to build 1,400 units.
Just want the zoning.
It's just zoning. So I want to be clear, but also, by right now, you can build 4-story buildings in the CBDR. You can have 18 units an acre in the CBDR. There are opportunities to get more density through existing zoning. In some areas, the MBTA overlay district that we added recently, we've limited that to 15 units an acre. So, I think that, I just want to be clear that 4 stories is allowed now.
Right, that's in the CBDS.
And then another question, just because all the folks keep asking about infrastructure and all that, how much do you think this would delay the Vernon Street wells and all that? Because that's going to take a lot of grant money to get. I know that we're talking 2028 there, but at the same time, we're probably not going to see any toilets flush at the Perkins property till 2027. at
Yeah,
least.
I think that, we're looking at a 3 to 5 year horizon, but to your point, and the manager and I've had this conversation, we're looking at replacement wells now. What I've suggested to the manager is what we put in for grants now are to pay for those wells that we're currently studying. The next wave would be that we look at funding for the Vernon Street wells. So I think this, if anything, keeps us ahead of schedule in terms of being able to address the problem.
No, I just wanted to bring this up because people have been asking.
Yeah.
Bi-weekly, I ask a question about our infrastructure. I got a list for today, Mike, so be ready for the town council meeting, all right? But, not meeting, you get what I'm saying. And, what else did I want to say? Just slipped my head. When it comes to the height, though, if I thought 4 would have passed, I would have went for it, but I can promise you, you could make an amendment right now, and I'm not an amendment, you could make a motion and get a second, I don't think it would pass. So that's why I went for the compromise with 5. And I still can't remember the one last thing I wanted to say, so I'm just gonna end it there.
All right, maybe if I could just make a comment. I did want to clarify, in the zoning, there is a section about the MBTA commuter overlay district. So we do identify in the zoning this area. So just to clarify that. Sorry. Thank you. In the actual document, there is a section that talks about an MBTA commuter overlay district. So this area that we've talked about, there is a map that shows that, and then there is language in there as well. So I just wanted to, we had some discussion earlier about what it was and wasn't. I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that. The other thing I would say is, you know, I've said this many times, but even if you took away all of the grants and you took away all of the things that people are talking about, the reality is this town needs help. We need to do something to put us on the track where it is the town that all of us talk about on Facebook, right? It doesn't have the dirty water. It doesn't have the holes in the road. And so for me, you know, I just want to make sure people understand a lot of work has gone into understanding an engine to create that. And for me personally, again, the number of residential units, the placement of them, just the fact that that is a spark that creates value down there, which makes all of the neighboring businesses, now they have to compete for tenants, so they spruce up their storefronts. Like it's the spark that starts the fire downtown that redoes everything. That is, and that's the model. And if you look at the Brookings Institute or some of these other studies on these, that's what they talk about. So that is the idea. And although I mentioned all of these things to me are like perfect timing, that give us, you know, some additional help there. But what I'm voting for is that it's not the MBTA compliance. It is for my kids who are both in Bridgewater school systems. It is to create something for them. And I feel like, you know, I got involved because I spent years watching the same conversation over and over and over again, and the same outcome over and over and over again. And you can walk downtown and see it. And, you know, you said you were here 20 years ago and you saw the same thing. I mean, and it's even worse now. The businesses are leaving. Some great businesses, center of town, walk around. Businesses that joined a year ago are now gone. It doesn't work today. And, you know, I love when people come up with new ideas, and I encourage you to get those ideas into the system so they work. But like, we got to do something. So I'm obviously voting yes on this. Any additional discussion?
Could I ask for a roll call?
Yeah, we can do a roll call. Okay, so we have a motion to approve. We have a second. We've had discussion. We'll end discussion. We'll move to a roll call vote. Would you run that roll call, or would I?
It would.
Thank you.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Ms. Robinson,
Yes.
Dr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon,
Yes.
Mr. Lindy.
No.
Thank you. With a vote of 7-1, the motion was approved.
Great, thank you. And I do want to thank everyone who showed up to share your opinion. Truly appreciated. We hope to make you proud with what this becomes. All right, we do have some other hearings tonight. I'm going to move on to agenda item B. We have a proposed ordinance D FY 22-008, Bridgewater Town Charter, Article 2, Legislative Branch Section 2-13A, Annual Stipend. The notice was posted in the 4/11/24 Enterprise. The time is 9:08. I'll now open the public hearing. I would ask Councilor Gallagher, who's the sponsor, if you wish to say anything additional.
No, this has been thrown around for, I don't know how, when was this introduced? In 2001?
At least.
2001. So anyway, I do think that, you know, the councilors do deserve some sort of a stipend for the work that they do. I've always believed in that. You know, this is my last council meeting, so if this ever gets approved, I'll never really see any of that unless I come back. But I do think no matter who serves on this board, there should be. And the amount, you know, was, I know, talked about in the Rules and Procedures Committee. It was just based on what other towns our size and form of government have. I think this should, obviously will go to the voters for an approval. We're not the approving authority here. We'll go to the voters, go to the legislature first, and then come back and go to the voters for final approval. But I support this.
Thank you. I think I did open the hearing.
But Mr. President, for a point, I don't know where this is going to go, but I'm the only name on this thing, and I will not be here anymore. So
Someone's going to have to
I'll make a motion.
If you pass it, then you're
It's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, this is up for a vote this evening.
Up for a vote tonight.
Yep. Are there any general questions from the public? Okay. Does anyone from the public wish to speak in favor? Does anyone from the public wish to speak in opposition? Yeah, welcome.
Good evening, Ed Ivaldi, Boxwood Lane. I was always taught that whatever you do in life, don't settle for less when you know you can do better. Although I've mentioned before that I do support stipends, and I do support stipends, this ordinance in its current state is still not the best it can be, as it continues to reveal gaps related to, number one, citizen input and the handling of appointed councilor scenarios. At your March 26th meeting, Councilor Chase attempted to resolve these gaps. However, several errors were made in his explanation. If you recall, I made a suggestion that one thing you could do for citizen input was to form an ad hoc committee to help you understand whether a raise was warranted or not. Councilor Chase said that the charter made no provision for the council to form committees. On the contrary, if he had read Article 3, Section 1B of the Administrative Code, he would have seen just the opposite. It reads as follows: the Bridgewater Town Council may establish multiple appointative bodies of the town based upon passage by a majority vote of its members of an ordinance creating such body. It goes on to say that the Bridgewater Town Council may from time to time, based on a passage by the majority vote of its membership, establish ad hoc committees to assist the town council in carrying out council responsibilities. So the bottom line is that, contrary to what Councilor Chase had mentioned, you as a body can create appointed bodies for any purpose you want, which would then be filled by the town manager. Next, Councilor Chase also said that citizens had plenty of time to provide input to the process through the public hearing process. As you all know, hearings, just like the one that we had tonight, are at the tail end of a process and don't adequately give citizens a way to engage in the process early on. In addition, hearings don't really give you, the council, all the time needed to digest and deliberate on any citizen input. Therefore, waiting until a hearing to gather citizens' input is simply too late in the process and shortchanges the public's opportunity to be engaged throughout the process. Citizens need to be engaged much earlier in the process. Lastly, Councilor Chase tried to make the case that stipends for appointed councilors were already covered by the current language. While the ordinance specifically calls out incumbent councilors and elected councilors, it omits persons appointed to serve when vacancies exist. If I asked each of you now to confirm whether appointed councilors would receive stipends based on your interpretation of the current language, how many of you would vote confidently yes? I'm having a hard time trying to understand why such a simple update to clarify whether appointed councilors receive stipends is being resisted. It seems like common sense. It's a common sense no-brainer. Why wouldn't you just want to clarify that in the language? Remember, clarity is always better than ambiguity. As you may recall, Councilor George had made a motion at that meeting to refer this ordinance back to Rules and Procedures to further review and clarify, which was unanimously rejected after Councilor Chase had spoken. So based on what you know now, and if you want to increase the likelihood of this passing at the ballot box, I would recommend that you reconsider Sean's original motion to go back to Rules and Procedures so that the subcommittee can once and for all include those two missing parts, provide a viable and timely way to gather citizen input, and remove any ambiguity around stipends for appointed people filling vacancies. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. President, point of personal privilege.
Yes.
Just in response, I would like to point out that there have been 11 meetings of various types, committee meetings, full council meetings, et cetera, that during which this matter has been discussed at great length, beginning on September 7th, 2021. This has been back and forth to the Rules and Procedures Committee, I believe 3 times. And I might add, on 2 occasions, specifically in response to questions and comments raised by Mr. Evaldi. His request to do so at the meeting he just made reference to, where the motion was made by Councilor George to send it back to Rules and Procedures Committee, would have been the 3rd meeting of Rules and Procedures to have discussed this at the behest of Mr. Evaldi. As to some of the particular comments that he's raised, and he referred to my previous comments in response to the motion initiated by Councilor George, the language of the ordinance does contemplate counselors, no matter how they, as I put it last time, no matter how they got here, if they were elected, including whether elected at an annual town election or at a special election, and if they are simply appointed, as we sometimes need to appoint a counselor to fill a vacancy. So all of that is easily contemplated by the language, and that is the very reason that the language is framed the way it is. And that was done specifically in response to that same comment previously raised by Mr. Evaldi. The other comment with respect to the charter, yes, certainly the council has the ability under the charter to create committees, including ad hoc committees. But the first mention that Mr. Evaldi made proposing a committee, he actually used the word commission. We can see that in the tape, and it sticks in my mind. What he was describing at the time, certainly as I interpreted it, and I believe others on the council did as well, is a body that would actually have voting control over this matter. And I pointed out then, and I pointed out at our last meeting, that is simply not contemplated by our charter. Our charter, by our charter, we are the legislative branch of the town. We were elected by you, the citizens, the voters of the town. We represent you. In doing so, you vest in us your power to vote. We are your representatives. And by virtue of that, it is our decision as to the passage of an ordinance. I pointed out last time, it would require a charter amendment to change that. And in fact, I thought further about that. And I actually concluded after having said that, even a charter amendment to change that, in my opinion, would probably not pass muster because it would be intruding, if you will, on the power, the legislative power of the legislative body. So none of that is even possible. So yes, an ad hoc committee on an advisory basis is possible, but I ask you, to what end? We've already had 11 meetings and more than ample opportunity to consider this over several years now. And I pointed out last time, and it bears repeating, that if this ordinance is passed by the council finally, it still needs to go to, just for clarification for you, it still needs to be returned to the state legislature, which will hopefully accept it and vote in favor of it. The governor would need to sign that, send it back to the town of Bridgewater. We would accept the result of it here on the council. We would vote to put that on an upcoming town election to be approved by the voters. If the voters approved it at the town election, there would be a year period until it would actually take effect. At that point, a year later, counselors who would be eligible under this ordinance to receive a stipend would have to wait another year because when you read the language, you'll see counselors are being paid in arrears. They'd have to work that year, and at the end of which they'd be eligible to be paid for that year they've already worked. So when you add up that whole time frame, I do have a PowerPoint slide that shows all this. When you add up all that time frame, and I said this last time, I'm going to say it again. My venture is that no one sitting here before you tonight will actually still be serving on the council at whatever point that this is enacted in law. End of my comment.
Thank you. Would anybody else from the public like to speak in opposition?
Janet Henson, Pleasant Street. The only thing I'm opposite to is the amount, 5,000. It seems a little steep for our town. That's $45,000 if you go 5 times 9. I just would suggest if you could amend it to go lower. You answered my question. It does go to the voters, so that would be the final thing. But you might get it better passed if it wasn't so much 5,000. I know it may not seem a lot, and I appreciate everybody's time, but I just personally think 5,000 is kind of steep to start with. To get everybody used to the idea, try to consider lowering it. You might have a better chance of it passing. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else from the public wish to speak in opposition? Yep. Oh, no. Giving up?
Oh, she did.
All right. I don't see anyone else that's speaking in opposition. Okay. Are there any questions from the town councilors? Yep. Councilor McKinnon.
Through you to the town manager. I heard a rumor selectmen used to get paid back in the day, 3,000. Is that true?
That predates me.
It's you.
But I do believe they received some sort of stipend.
Yeah. I was just wondering there, because if they got paid 3,000 back then with a COLA adjustment, 5,000 doesn't seem like that much, in my opinion. But one thing I did want to do was make a small amendment for the, what's this, third one? Sentence, persons elected shall be made between the election of a new council. Hold on, I gotta zoom in, I'm on my phone, I'm sorry. Persons elected to serve as councilors by special town election shall be eligible for payment. That one right there. I want to change it to persons elected and/or appointed to serve as councilors by special town elections and/or appointments shall, et cetera, et cetera.
For clarification, I kind of know where you're heading with that, and I see where you're going. My suggestion would be simply just on the line that starts with persons elected to serve as councilors by special town election. Simply add or appointment after special town election at the end of the sentence where it says with the date of the special elections, add or appointment. I think that potentially clears up some confusion as far as it not covering an appointment situation. But if you add to that line just the or appointment, I think that gives you the coverage that potentially would make a clarification if somebody was appointed. And I would,
Yeah.
well, to encourage, to back up your original
Well, I'll
motion.
draw mine.
All right, so I'll make a motion to add those two things to that last line.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, and just to confirm, it's the fourth line from the bottom. Persons elected to serve as councilors by special town election
Or
inserting
appointment.
or appointment shall be eligible for payment of an annual stipend. Blah, blah, blah. Okay,
And at the end of that line, beginning with the date of the special election or appointment.
beginning with the date. Oh, I see. At the end.
At the
Special
end of that
election.
line.
Yep, or appointment. Great.
I believe that, like I say, creates some clarification if we do have an appointment situation that was brought up by a town member.
Perfect. So we have a motion. We have a second. Any additional discussion? I see none. Let's vote on that motion. We'll do it by voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The motion passes. Okay. So I go back to the process. Okay, we're in the point where there are questions from the town councilors. Any additional questions from the town councilors? Yep, Council Robinson?
I'm just, and sorry, since y'all have been at this a long time and I don't remember from the last time we spoke about this. What is the process then? So this would, so we vote and, but the vote would be to put it to, for the public to vote, correct?
Yeah, any changes to our charter, we approve first.
Right.
It then goes up to the state legislature where someone there has to sponsor it and could change it. And then if they approve it, it goes to the governor. The governor then has to approve it. If the governor approves it, it comes back to go on the ballot, and the voting citizens of Bridgewater would have to approve it as well.
Okay, so that could be at best next annual election. Annual.
It's probably even
much
further
longer.
out.
Okay,
Yeah,
I was gonna say
I
at
think the
best,
at best was like 2 years or something in the
it
early
take-
conversations.
It's a process.
Gotcha. That's what I
Yep.
figured. Thank you.
Yeah, great, thanks.
Mr. President.
Yes,
So-
Councilor
Thank
Dr.
you.
Perry?
And just one other comment, just to address, you know, the amount again. I mean, we've vetted this pretty well as far as looking at other towns and amounts that councilors would be making in a town of similar size. And again, this, as mentioned by Councilor Chase, this isn't going to be in place until probably all of us are gone. So at this point, it certainly might make it attractive for, you know, down the line, any potential person who wanted to run for town council, you know, to have it at this level. It might, you know, create more, you know, more interest in the position. Because at this point in time, none of us are getting paid anything, but you know, again, just to, you know, create more buzz and interest in running for this position, I think it just creates a fair amount that would compensate any council for their time, you know, a few years down the line or now, but it's not going to take place until down the line. And again, it's going to be up to the voters to approve. I don't think the amount is outrageous or out of line compared to other towns of similar size and government setup. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Okay, I would just add to that real quickly, just a reminder that, you know, this did not originate at the council. This was a recommendation that came from the citizens and has gone through a lot of process, but we are acting on behalf of those recommendations. We've changed it, as Mr. Valdi had mentioned, but it's originated with the Charter Review Committee. Okay. Any additional questions? All right. At this time, I will close the hearing. It is 9:27, and I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? I see none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
We have
Also a nay.
2 nays and the rest in favor. The motion passes. Okay, we're now moving on to public hearing C, proposed ordinance D FY 22-009, Bridgewater Town Charter, Article 3, elected official recall provision. Notice was posted in the 411 Enterprise. The time is now 9:27. I will now open the public hearing. Would invite Councilor Gallagher to say anything if
Is
you'd
that
like.
mine?
It is.
And so long.
How's my name get there?
It's the gift that keeps giving.
No, I think this just tightens up the procedure to go forward with a recall in town if needed.
Great, thank you. Are there any general questions from the public? Okay, does anyone from the public, oh, sorry, yep, please.
Yes. I just would like the procedure explained so that the public can hear it. And is it by referendum or how does it work?
It's a relatively long one, but let me see if I can pull out a couple sentences here. Let's see. What it does is it gives some conditions where someone could be recalled and some conditions where they can't. So you can't try to recall somebody based on a vote they made, but you could based on a transgression or something like that. So the first large paragraph is really about those conditions. The second is about the petition process and sort of the timelines and the way that works. Just looking to see if there's any key things here.
Recall election.
Yeah, and then there's a recall election, and the incumbent continues to perform the duties until the results of that recall election. And if they are not recalled, they serve out their term. If they are recalled, obviously the term ends. The ballots, and then it specifies how the ballot looks on the actual recall. It's like on the ballot. And it's essentially for or against, and then the name of the officer. So it's a citizen referendum, goes through the process, ends up on the ballot, and ultimately passes or doesn't. And we have in the past had debate about the conditions for recall. And so that went through some conversation. Great question, though. Are there any other questions from the public? Okay. Would anyone from the public wish to speak in favor? Would anyone from the public wish to speak in opposition? Are there any questions from the town councilors? All right. In that case, it is 9:30. I'll now close the hearing, and I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Any additional discussion? I see none. We can move to a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The motion passes. All right. The next item on the agenda is item G, license transactions. We have none. The next item is H, presentation. Marilee Hunt informed me that she was unable to attend. She did send a letter. I wouldn't be able to adequately represent it, but I would say the sentiment was the hope that the council, future councils, seek to involve the town clerk more in presenting and kind of seeking input from the town clerk position. But I would encourage everyone to read that statement. The next item on the agenda is item I, the town manager's report. And this is the only item we have this evening is follow-up to public comments. Given the time, I might ask the town manager to give us the headlines.
I can very easily do that. The hybrid meeting question, we're working on that. There are a lot of factors that play into that, including funding, technology, and legal issues. So it's a work in progress. It is not going to happen very soon. There was a question asked about parking at the Academy building. We're aware of that. We try to clean out the lot when we know that the building is being used heavily, like tax time. We do have a number of employees that need to use the parking lot close to their workplace, but we are working on that one as well. And the most important one about being able to hear the meeting at home. And two pieces of advice I can give is one, speak into the microphone, which I say all the time. The other one is I learned today, which I didn't know, but if you are watching on, say, YouTube or Facebook, there are default volume settings on those programs, and you can go in and increase the volume on those platforms at home. So that's the very quick version. Headline version.
Thank you. Any questions for the town manager? Yeah,
No
Councilor McKinnon.
questions. Just,
Future item?
yeah.
Yep.
No one has questions?
No questions.
All right. So starting off, Spring Street, I know the launch, we've been talking about getting an engineer down there for the gazebo and all that. And this weekend we have the big First Responders Day event. And sadly, I wasn't here last week to request this, but we still haven't cleaned up that area that we're thinking about paving. And I'm not talking about getting it paved right away. I'm just talking about pulling all the stumps out and all that. I mean, last cleanout we had, my truck was luckily down here and I had a chain to pull them out. But that's not the case right now, and my truck's sadly broken. So, I mean, I'll talk more about all the people that will be there during my council comments, because it's a lot more than I expected Al to get. But it would definitely be nice to see some love down there. Another thing from last meeting that I kind of wish I was here to talk about was the tire pile. I did hear what you heard from what you said at the last meeting, that some of that pile could have been on BSU's property. And I'm wondering if that was ever looked at yet. And when it does, I would like an update on that, because that'd be good to know if some of that tire pile is on BSU property. 104, a few meetings ago, we had a talk about signage, and we talked about the Hayward intersection, getting flashing lights there. We talked about at the end of Hale Street, the no left turn that was missing, and then from Plymouth all the way down 104 towards BRS, there's no speed limit signs. There's nothing. I mean, we've had 3 big car accidents on 104 in the last 2 weeks. And I'm not saying that's because there's no signage, but maybe a little signage might help. And then the cops might be able to pull people over speeding on that road and say, hey, there actually is a speed limit sign here. So why are you doing 20 over the speed limit and crashing into a guardrail? Not saying that's what happened for the person that crashed in the guardrail, but that did just happen last week. Winter Street, it is paving season. We talked it. Like to see us walk that because that's been a long time coming. That street's been in disarray for over a decade. And I mean, we have set the monies to the side and it's paving season. So you said at the beginning of the spring, we were going to get that down. I want to know if we got a bid or if we've even put it out to bids. And Flag Street at the Conant intersection. I just want to talk about that for a second because there was another sinkhole and it was the biggest one yet. I know the whole street needs to get done, but we need to redo this intersection before someone drives down the road and falls into the road. The drainage right there is horrible. I drove by last week, maybe 2 weeks ago, half the whole street was flooded at that intersection because the drainage is so bad right there. I know the drainage is bad down the whole road, but that's probably the worst one is right at that intersection at the second house on the left. And like I said, I know we need to do the whole street, but I really think we need to rush that intersection as fast as we can. Because I don't know personally, but I guarantee you the DPW is kind of sick and tired of screwing around with that street and that intersection. I mean, Oak Street just had a sinkhole too. So we definitely need to stop putting this stuff on the back burner. I know it's expensive and all that, but the speed of government in some things really hurts us, can hurt us if we don't act. And then my last thing, and this is Bridgewater. It's a town, even though we're called the city of the town of Bridgewater. You hear rumors. You hear all these rumors. People say this. I mean, I heard that you're thinking about leaving, and I don't think that's true. And I'm not asking that. But my thing is, I want to know what our work at home policy is, because about a month ago, I asked you where our assistant town manager is, because a lot of citizens and people have been asking, and she's still nowhere to be found. I don't know if she's working from home. You said to me she was sick. I don't think that's true. I don't know. I'm not going to dig into anyone's life, but
I think that's probably one category that
Yeah.
would be in violation of the charter. We're not.
well, I
won't
want to
have
know
the
the
town
I want
manager address.
know the work at home
If you want
policy
to have a
then.
conversation, obviously outside with the town manager, by all means, but the town council has no purview over what the town or who the town employs and what their employment status is or what they're currently doing in that employment status. It's so far beyond what the town council's role really is, so.
Well, if we did, I get it. I'm not going to talk on that
What I'm
anymore.
saying is he's not going to answer that
Yeah.
question. So I appreciate that you asked it, but I'm going to tell you straight up that I'm advising him he's not going to get
Yeah,
into that.
he doesn't need to
There's a
answer, but
litany of
I get it.
issues
No, I get it.
regarding that. There's a litany
Yeah.
of legal issues regarding someone's health status conceivably, if that's what you're talking about. And so I figure I may as well say it now
I
so
get
that I'm
that.
very
It's just
clear
been
about
months,
it and
so
so
I'm
that it
wondering.
doesn't come up again.
Yeah.
But he's not going to address that.
Yeah, well, one thing I would like to say is I think we should look into a work from home policy for some people, because that will help the parking situation. Yeah, it will. I mean, there are plenty of positions that can work from home in this town. And she's one of them, you're one of them, possibly on certain days. Bob, I know he takes days too. That's all I'm gonna say there, and that's it for me.
Okay. Okay. Yes, Councilor Lindy.
Can I just get an update on the fire hydrant status? Walking around downtown, there's one right next to Town Hall that says out of service.
Okay. Yep. Councilor Murphy?
Can I just add the fire station update? I know you had mentioned possibly getting that contract done the last time we met, so thank you.
All right. Thank you. Moving on, item J, discussions, we have none. Committee reports, K, we have none. Legislation for action. The first item we have is petition P 2024-020, a resolution in recognition of Pride Month. The measure was not referred to any committee. 14 days has elapsed. Therefore, the measure may be voted this evening. I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Any additional discussion? I see none. Let's move to a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion passes. The next item B, Order O FY 24-027, FY 25 water and sewer rates. Budget and Finance voted 3-0 to recommend at their 4/1/24 meeting. Finance Committee meeting on 4/22/24 voted 4 yes, 3 no, 1 abstained. That's a Finance Committee vote.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do those have to be done together?
Do what?
Water and sewer together?
Oh, sorry. I believe it's all in the same.
It's broken out, two different figures here.
You want to combine both?
No, I don't want to combine it. I'm asking if it can be voted on separately.
No,
That's not.
It's currently is written.
Yeah.
Because there's water in the sewer.
Yeah. Or make a motion to refer to a committee maybe for.
There's water in the sewer, so it goes together.
One of them is a 7% increase, one
I
of them
know.
is a 50% increase.
Do you want to make a motion on it? You could send it.
I don't want to send it anywhere. Can we not separate it here and vote on it?
He said
No.
Okay.
Because that's not what the legislation actually is. It's actually not. So you can certainly vote to not approve.
Okay.
Okay. Do we already have a motion to approve?
In a second.
Yeah, we have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? I see none. All those in favor, we're going to go to a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay.
No.
Nay.
No.
Okay. So I'm not sure I got all. So we have nay,
Should we do-
abstain.
Should we do roll call?
I think Susie voted no too.
Yeah, I'm a
Yeah.
nay.
Why don't we do roll call?
2-1.
Okay.
5
So can we run a roll call vote? And maybe just a question for the town. Can you abstain
Yeah, I was going to say. I don't want-
if you're at a meeting? And,
He can abstain. Yeah,
okay.
sure.
yeah, no, I mean, I'm not trying to force you into a decision, but
No,
Yeah, you can abstain.
I think it's a valid question because I've been challenged by former counselors.
I mean, you've abstained
I'm just being
too.
very open about it, right?
Yeah,
That
I
have
think-
sa- Have said that, yeah.
if the town attorney
You can
says we
abstain.
said you can
Okay.
abstain. Okay. Let's do a roll call vote.
Mr. Lindy,
No.
Mr. McKinnon,
No.
Dr. Perry,
Same thing.
Yes.
abstaining.
Ms. Robinson,
No.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Thank you. With a vote of 5 yes and 3 no, the motion is approved.
Okay. Motion passes. Moving on to item C, Order O FY 24-039, deed in lieu of foreclosure for 0 Laurel Street. Budget and Finance voted 3-0 to recommend at their 4/1/24 meeting. Finance Committee meeting on 4/22/24 voted 8-0 to approve. I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Any discussion? I see none. We can move to a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The motion passes. The next item, Order O, FY 24-040, Transfer Order Water Capital. Budget and Finance meeting on 4/16/24.
We voted to approve.
Okay. I
We
don't see
voted
that
to
in my
recommend
notes.
this.
Voted to recommend. Finance Committee met on 4/22 and voted 8-0 to approve. I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, I see none. All those in favor, we'll move to a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes. Moving on to item M, old business. We have none. Item N, new business. A, petition P 2024-021, a resolution honoring Juneteenth. I would entertain a motion to retain at council.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, I would just add, I think we heard some great comments on this evening. I think in America, freedom has been a moving target, right? I think if you look at population numbers, July 4th celebrates freedom for about 80% of the population of America at the time. And the remaining 20% took over 100 years and continues, I think to look for that full freedom. So I personally think if you're an American and you support freedom, you have to support it for 100%. And this is a part of that equation. So,
Mr. President, excuse me if I may, point of order, but I think that I would recommend one amendment. I noticed that the date in the final paragraph declaring June 17th as the date of commemoration, and actually Juneteenth itself is June 19th. I think it was confused with the dates of the flying of the Juneteenth flag, which do commence on the 17th.
I see. So is there a motion to amend?
Yes, I would motion to amend.
We have a motion, a second, and then the new dates are,
It would be simply June 19th.
Instead of the 17th at first.
okay, June 3rd through June 19th.
No, just
No,
that
no.
first line.
Oh, sorry.
Now therefore, right at following that.
Yep.
Just changing June 17th in the first line.
Oh, I see. I
First
see.
line.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion on the motion, the amendment?
Oh, sorry, this is just about the amendment. I have a general question.
No questions on the amendment. Okay. All those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. The amendment passes. And then back to discussion on the original motion to retain at council.
Oh, I think my question is just more of a general question about some of the comments that were made earlier. Is there a way, so we would have to propose new legislation if we wanted to do this in perpetuity, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So I think we could pass this, and then you could come after this and propose having it in perpetuity.
Yep. Okay.
So I thought that was an interesting idea.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep. Okay, thanks. So we have a motion and a second to retain a council. All those in favor, any additional discussion? All those, we'll move to a voice vote. All those in favor of retaining a council to our next scheduled meeting, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Motion passes. All right, that brings us to item O, citizen comments. I would invite anyone from the public who would like to speak to approach the podium. Again, I would ask you to just keep the comments to 3 minutes or less. State your name and address.
Janet Hanson, Pleasant Street. I am looking forward to that you would have this so that both the flags will be all the time. So we wouldn't have to have this kind of a meeting every single year to approve it. So I would like to see that going forward if you can. And still haven't heard anything about CBDS, but I guess I'll never will. So I'll have to ask specific questions on my own. But that's all I wanted to say. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Thank you for Mr. Gallagher, Mr. Moore. You'll be missed. And good luck in everything that you're going for. And that's all I wanted to say is just let's make it automatic for those flags so they don't have to go through this anymore. Thank you.
Thank you. And maybe to the town manager, could we add an update on CBDS to the next town manager update? Just a clarification there.
Yep.
Thank you. Welcome. Do you have your timer?
No, I'll be brief. I have a pen now. Bill Wood, 388 Hayward Street. I think I served with Dennis his entire time, and Eric. We served together for quite a while, and Sean's not here, but the whole council puts their heart into it, and I know that serving for 3 years or 9 years, there's a lot of work in every single year, And I commend you guys for stepping up and serving. And hopefully, you know, as we go through the decades, councils will do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else from the public care to speak? Yeah, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Laureen Powers, 41 Sunrise Drive. I'm a member of BCCR, and I wasn't able to be here earlier, so just a couple of quick comments related to the Juneteenth amendment. I'm sure many of you are aware that BCCR has monthly standouts relevant to a variety of social justice and civil rights. We hold signs to educate and support the people driving by. And certainly one of the issues we do stand out for is Black Lives Matter. And inevitably, when we are having a standout for Black Lives Matter, there's usually at least one or two cars that will pull up in front of us, which is in front of Walgreens, put down their window and make the comment, "All lives matter." And my response always is, yes, all lives should matter. And when they matter, they should matter equally. But we know that that is not always a reality. So flying the Juneteenth flag for 2 weeks in June is a reminder of Black history and also of our responsibilities to work towards a goal when we really can say all lives matter. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yeah, welcome.
Rebecca Fleisch-Cadero, 135 Deerfield Drive. Like Laureen, we were both traveling for several hours, so apologies for speaking late at the meeting and maybe being a bit redundant. But I did want to begin, as I typically do, by thanking you, councilors, for providing 2 opportunities for residents and even non-residents to speak at Bridgewater's council meetings. Many aren't aware public speaking here is not required by state law. So everyone present is observing democracy in action with all individuals equally participating. At the beginning of these meetings, we proudly and patriotically recite our pledge to the American flag, referencing, as others before me have noted, liberty and justice for all. And yet, this flag hasn't always represented all. Also noted earlier, many African Americans first became aware of their own liberty on June 19th, 1865, Juneteenth. 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, and almost 100 years after Americans declared liberty from Britain. And an important aside note, many African Americans fought in and gave up their lives in that war for what they assumed was their country. And therein lies the significance of publicly raising and flying the Juneteenth flag. Similarly to our reflecting on our independence by waving the American flag on July 4th, the Juneteenth flag fluttering over Bridgewater's town square reflects the celebration of liberty for all African Americans on Juneteenth. The accompanying ceremony affords an opportunity for education and explanation about this celebration, which, although it is new to many of us, has been observed for over 150 years. Rather than being divisive, as some have maintained, the Juneteenth flag allows us to come together to celebrate liberty, but also to be mindful of democracy's fragility. As Juneteenth co-chair, along with Janice Campbell-Means, who spoke earlier tonight, I felt particularly committed to speaking here tonight. Thank you to all here for listening.
Thank you. Would anybody else care to speak? Welcome.
Ray Ajemian, Alders Road. I hope to see all of you 10:30 Friday in front of Williams School. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Would anybody else, do we have anyone else? Okay, I don't see anyone. I'll now close citizen comments. And we'll move on to counselor comments, starting with Counselor Gallagher.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I've been waiting 3 hours for this, so you're going to have to bear with me. I certainly want to thank the public and all the people that came out tonight to have this spirited discussion. Pretty much most of it focused on the form-based code and adopting that tonight. Having differences of opinion and different views is something that I think we regard on the council as very helpful to us into making a final decision on any piece of legislation or policy that we put forward. And I appreciate all the other comments that were made tonight regarding all the other issues. Having an engaged public is important to the council. It's important to our democracy. It's important to our form of government. I also want to thank, I know she has left, but I wanted to recognize one of our esteemed citizens who frequently joins us at the podium every meeting, but hasn't in a while. But she was here earlier, and that's Patricia Neary. And I want to congratulate her on her being the Rotary Club of Bridgewater's Citizen of the Year. That's a very good, a very honorable award for her, and well-deserved based on her civic involvement in this community and the things that she stands up for and fights for the better of our town. You know, tonight reminds me of 15 years ago, April of 2009, when I gave a farewell speech at that time when I left the Board of Selectmen after serving 7 years. At that meeting, we had a 2-hour public hearing on a project called the Whispering Woods. I don't know if everybody remembers that sort of disaster that took place. And we had a 2-hour public hearing on that, but I stuck through it and was able to give my farewell speech that night. And here we are 15 years later, and we had a 2-hour public hearing as well. But then I talked about the past 7 years of selectmen, and the 7 years I also served on the advisory board. I reflected on the proposal that was put forward during that time of going from 3 to 5 selectmen, which was, I thought, needed to have a broader representation of our community. I talked about the Blue Star Banner program that I worked on and helped put forward and have a ceremony to recognize families that have a service member overseas or at war. I talked about raising a lot of money to help send our World War II veterans to Washington, D.C. And we were able to raise enough money to send a good number of our World War II veterans for no cost to see the World War II Memorial. That was in 2006, which had only been opened for about a year. I'm not going to go over those 14 years, but I ended that speech by saying that perhaps you'll see me again. And a few years away from elective office, I served on the first Charter Review Committee in 2014. And then in 2015, I decided to run for town council. And here I am 9 years later, completing my 3rd term. I often wonder, as we all do on occasion, where does the time go? And tonight is really not a farewell, because I hope, as I pursue another endeavor, that I can continue to serve this community in another capacity, one that I think will be helpful and beneficial to all our citizens based on my background, experience, and education. So tonight is my final meeting as a counselor and my final council comments. As I reflect on this time, this past weekend, someone came up to me and said, you know, Dennis, you've been a town councilor for 9 years. You served as selectman for 7 years. You know, what is some of the things that you have accomplished? It's a heavy question. So I took a deep sigh and I'm like, ooh, better answer this one correct. And I sit there and I said, hey, look, I brought you 6 Super Bowl champions, 4 World Series, a Stanley Cup, and an NBA title. Now, what more can there be? But it's really not what I do or what we do as individuals. What we accomplish collectively as a council is what's important. It's the public policy that we put together as a council. So as I reflect on these past 9 years, I look back, not ahead, at some of the things that we have voted on, particularly tonight, and how that will pan out over the next several years. In May of 2015, when I had my first council meetings, we remember we met down at that time, we were meeting at BTV Studios because this building was still being under renovations. And in August of 2016, we started meeting in this chamber for our council meetings. On December 4th of 2016, I was honored to be the council president to speak at the official rededication of this building. And some of those who actually graduated from this building when it was a high school were in attendance that afternoon. And I do think that they were overall impressed with the wonderful job that was done in restoring and maintaining this building. It is really the current centerpiece of our community. I've always thought that being out in the community, attending community events within the time frame that we have is also important. I've also made my best effort to support our local civic organizations and events that they have as much as I can, and I will always continue to do that. The meetings we have here, although are extremely important, as I have said many times, the most important work that we do is what we do in our committees. And I've been grateful to serve my entire time on the council, on the Budget and Finance Committee, with most of that time as chairman. The thought process and the research that is done in committees make us come here with a recommendation that has been flushed and solid for the council to act on. We have had many spirited debates, as we should, regarding those recommendations, and our approval will become public policy for the town. We've talked about recreational marijuana at great length, development out on 104, form-based code, which we talked about tonight, the charter review recommendations, the vision to reality, budget discussions, and debates on a veterans district. But let's not forget whether we should stand or get a stipend or not. If that comes to fruition, I hope you make it retroactive to 2015. But these are just a few. We know some issues and the decisions that we make are complicated, yet some are pretty simple and routine. But to respect and hear all viewpoints is the key to making that final decision. Some of us win and some of us lose. The discussions and the various views are considered. And when that happens, it makes the end result much stronger and solid. So over these last 9 years, I've been president twice and vice president 3 times. And I'm grateful for the support in allowing me to play a leadership role at the council level. We are all leaders in our community, as we have put ourselves out there and taken times away from our families, the public criticism that comes along with this in being in elective office. I've been proud and honored to speak at many events in Bridgewater representing our town, the rededication, as I mentioned, of this building, Veterans Day events, Memorial Day events, Pride and Juneteenth events, Senior Center events, the State of the Town ceremonies, Eagle Scout award ceremonies, and many others. But the one event that has always been my favorite, that requires no speeches and no pressure from us, is the 4th of July parade. It is just a time of celebration and coming together as a community like no other. A lot of work goes on behind the scenes putting that day of events together. And it always does come together through support of the community. As hard as it is that they have to raise that money, eventually the work is done and we have a great day in Bridgewater with activities and a fireworks show. I want to thank our previous council clerk, Ann Holmberg, who served us many years during the beginning, when the change of government was not so easy, but she was an asset to the council. And our current council clerk, Deborah Ward, who is always there to answer our questions and does the hard work for us behind the scenes. To our town council, SEL, Mr. Rollins, decisive advice and following the law. Although sometimes I scratch my head, I know that the advice is well thought out and in the best interest of the town. And our town manager, Mr. Dutton, I know at times it may seem that I want you to move on. but that's not really the case. At one time, I had hoped, because I hope to have your job sometime. That's why I was like that. But I really do respect you, and I respect the work that you do for our community. You protect the town and the council with all your advice. And I wish you well with the future council that comes in at the next meeting. To all our town employees and other officials that work for the town, public service can be given a bad rap at times, but those who have served and are serving have always done their jobs with the utmost professionalism and dedication. And I want to mention our outgoing town clerk, Marilee Hunt, the dedication that you brought to your position in being the face of the community, the first stop everyone sees when they enter our building. You and your staff have always been the true professionals that a town clerk's office is known to be. As you work on your last town election this evening, this Saturday, and head off to enjoy some ever so deserving retirement, you should know that this counselor and friend, thank you for your dedicated service to our town. To all those who are running for office in this Saturday's election, I wish you all luck and thank you for stepping up to the plate and wanting to serve our community. I know who I will be voting for, and I know why. It's nice to see contested races. Some will win and some will not. But you all gave it a shot and campaigned on why you're running for office and what you want to do to make our community a better place. And finally, to my current colleagues on the council, this past year has been a very fast one. Welcoming new counselors, McKinnon, Murphy, and Robinson, I think all three of you are making a difference and are contributing in a positive way as we try to move the town forward and to do what is best. Councilors Perry, Lindy, and Chase, I've worked with all of you for many years, and I wish you well as you continue to navigate the current council and the three new ones that are coming in that'll be elected on Saturday. Last week, we said goodbye to Councilor George, and I thank him for the service to this town. And to Council President Moore, this past year has not really been the easiest for a council president, but you have shown strong leadership and have run our meetings with the highest degree of respect for the speakers and held a high degree of decorum within our chamber. I wish you well as you depart the council tonight as well. So tonight, the banner has been returned. I put it in the hallway over there in the hopes that it is used by this council for future 4th of July parades, veterans parades, and Christmas processions. I think it is important that the banner be carried. Not that the people don't know who you are, but the some that might not. So I leave tonight with the hopes that I can return later this year or early next year in a different role, but yet continuing to work for a better community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Gallagher. Councilor McKinnon.
Mixing it up, huh?
Yeah, just follow the list.
So I just want to bring up First Responders Day on the 27th. Let me bring this up so we know who's there. Fire departments, we got Bridgewater, West Bridgewater, and Middleborough. Police departments, we got Bridgewater, the state police, they're bringing their K-9 too, and the state police are bringing their bomb squad. The Marines are going to be there, the Coast Guard's going to be there, the Air Force is going to be there, and there's going to be a lot of local food and local businesses that are also there, too many to list. After that, we have the town cleanup right here in the parking lot at 8 to 12 on the 28th, which is a Sunday. And I want to talk about the three counselors that actually showed up and helped clean up the park when we did the day and got covered in poison ivy. We didn't mean to send you over in that corner. We promise, all right? But I'll start with Sean. I know he's not here. He could be listening. Sean is the one that I didn't deal with the most here, and I kind of regret that because I feel like I could have got a lot of knowledge from him. I mean, a lot of people I'm on different committees with, or I talk to at different events, et cetera, and Sean was probably the one I was least vocal with, and I do kind of regret that because he did seem smart. He's very vocal when it was something he wanted to talk about, and he was one of the guys that talks with his hands too, so. Eric, appreciate you. I'll be honest, you're the one the most I'm worried about leaving. Well, not worried, but I'm gonna miss. And I appreciate just all the talks we had. You were the one that listened to all my problems. And I mean, I got a piece of paper right here that proved I wasn't lying, but we don't need to go there, all right? Then Dennis, good luck to you. I hope you're well. Me and you, we did pretty good together. We didn't see eye to eye all the time, but that's how it's supposed to be, right? I mean, it should be a good race for you. You have a lot of support in Bridgewater. I hope you can find that support in Rainham too. And that's about it for me.
Thank you, Councilor McKinnon. Appreciate the kind words. Dr. Perry?
Quick shift left. I was going across and then coming back.
Yeah,
but
I'm not sure.
You're all over the place. No, that's all right. Perfectly fine. All right. So again, I want to thank everyone who came out here tonight to speak. It was a great dialogue and information back and forth. Just everyone in this council has the best interests of the town at heart. Many of us were born and raised here. I lived here just about my entire life. I have the town in my heart. That's why I do what I do here on the council and the things I get involved in. I only want to see the best for the town of Bridgewater. I do think that this form-based code, even though it's going along with the MBTA's community agreement that not everyone aligns with, but it gives us the tool and the framework to make progress with what we want to do in the town here. And again, who knows what's going to happen with that agreement? It may stay, it may change, who knows? But at least at this point, if we're in line with it, then we can get the grant monies that we need to, do other things in town, water, sewer, roads, things of that nature. Because without it, it's coming out of the taxpayers' pockets. And we don't want that. None of us want that. If we can offset that cost by any ways necessary, we should look at that. So, I want the public to understand, where we're all coming from with this. It's all in the best interest of the town. Change is hard. We all know change is difficult, but times are changing. The towns around us are changing. We have to change with the times as well. And it's to the betterment of the town, to help fund things that the town needs, to help provide services that the citizens of the town needs. And it's not happening overnight. I mean, we're not seeing the 1,400 units being built overnight or even the next year. This is a 5, 10+ year process. So it's not going to change overnight. It's just step one in trying to get things in place to make some positive changes. And hopefully one of the first things we'll see change is this site on Broad Street and hopefully some responsible development there. So I just wanted to make that comment and supporting why I voted the way I voted earlier tonight. But again, I do thank everyone who came out to speak, and I value everyone's opinion on that. I do want to, again, thank Council Gallagher and Council Moore for their years on the council. Obviously, Council Gallagher goes back many, many years to the selectmen, as he mentioned. He's done a number of wonderful things for this town. He put in his time. He put in a lot of effort, and I certainly wish you the best of luck in your next venture. I hope it goes well. But again, we are going to miss your voices on the council, both of you. They're big shoes to fill. And as well for Councilor George, who left us as our last meeting. And I think you said it very well, Mr. Gallagher, that, it's not an individual thing that we're doing. We work together well as a group. We've gotten things accomplished well as a group. We've had, good discussions. We haven't always agreed on everything. But in the end, I think we've come up with decisions that has been beneficial for the town going forward. And that's just why I mentioned that, because I hope with the new councilors that do get elected, that same cooperation and discussion continues in that same fashion. Because in the end, it's all about trying to push the town forward. I don't want to see us going backward in any way. We're in the form of government that we have. I want to keep it going in that direction. And I want us to continue to make progress to make Bridgewater the best it can be. We've got great employees in place. We've got great leaders in place. We want to continue that going forward. And I hope, the people who want the candidates in place get elected, and hopefully they can continue to work with us as a solid, cohesive group. Let's see. And then again, I also want to thank Marilee Hunt for her years of service as town clerk. She's done a wonderful job, and I wish her many, many, many years of health and happiness in her retirement. And we'll see who the next town clerk will be, and I hope they get the job done just as well as she did. Thank you. That's all I got.
Thank you. Counselor Robinson?
Okay, sorry, this is going to be a little reiterative, but I'll try and keep it relatively brief. I also have to echo the sentiments. Having been a co-sponsor of this ordinance that a lot of folks put a lot of time into, I made a very poor joke to a resident that if we were paid a stipend, I probably made less than $1 an hour just working on this one ordinance alone. There was so much that went into this behind the scenes, from the town administration, Jason, my CD partners, Counselor Chase, Counselor McKinnon, the planning board, all the rest of the council, and then certainly cannot discount the amount of work that went into it also from the citizens who paid attention. So thank you. I'm sorry some of our citizens will be disappointed, but I hope also that you can see the genuineness that has come through from all of us in terms of the intent and the hope, and hopefully the excitement that we'll see in the future around this initiative. So thank you, everyone, for your part. And then I'll say my farewells as well. So first year as a counselor, even though I had been in FinCom and kicked around a little bit, I'm going to start with Dennis real quick, because Dennis, I will definitely say you are somebody who just shows up, and you have been everywhere. And thank you for your leadership and just setting such an amazing example for so many folks in this town, and for what you've really done for so many people. Learned a lot from you and appreciate just the camaraderie. So thank you. And Eric, I definitely echo the sentiments as well. You've taken on a lot just this year. Sorry, choking here. You took on a lot this year, and yes, the decorum, the grace, the respect, I think we all admire that in you, and you will be missed, but we know you're still around. So thank you for everything. Very much appreciated. And that's it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Counselor Chase?
Thank you, Mr. President. And I certainly would also want to firstly thank everyone who appeared this evening and made comments, or if you didn't make comments, but we've received many comments through various channels from so many people in town in recent weeks. And it's so important that you've been here, those of you who are here tonight or still here, and those who have already left, to really keep us honest and to be sure that we're taking your views into account. We absolutely know that we have a duty to do that. And not that we need to be reminded of it, but you do remind us of that. And I appreciate that. And so I hope that you'll continue to do so. And I trust that you will. Just with respect to our departing council members, certainly Councilor Gallagher, your service to the town has been just exemplary. It's something that I don't know that anyone in my memory in the town can match the level of commitment and dedication to service that you've contributed here in your many roles, including your role during the town cleanup days, which I remember well. But I thank you very much for that. I thank you personally, because I felt very much that you helped to mentor me as I joined the council. And I certainly looked to your guidance and your example, and I appreciate all of that. And I know in your future plan, you'll succeed very well. So I thank you for everything. Councilor Moore, your tenure has not been as long as that of Councilor Gallagher, but you have absolutely made a a mark that is indelible. I think it'll be very difficult for whomever the next president will be to compare with the record of leadership that you have provided. I think, quite honestly, it's been truly superior. And in just a matter of a few years of your service on the council, you've just done a tremendous job. And I thank you very much for that. I also do think that credit and thanks are due to our town clerk, Mary Lee Hunt. I've appreciated working with her over the past number of years and wish her well, certainly. I hope she continues to make appearances here before the council as a citizen. I trust she probably will. I look forward to that. Of course, we've already made mention of the fact of the annual town election coming up on Saturday. Clearly, I want to encourage everyone to be present and to vote if you've not already voted in advance. And I look very much forward to observing that and taking part in it myself. I'm not a candidate, but I'll have the privilege of just being able to sit back and take it all in, because it is something that I think for all of us every year we look forward to, because it represents a commitment by a new group of citizens to come forward and serve the town. And as we can attest, it's a level of commitment that has to be taken seriously, and we have to credit anyone who does step forward to do that. And I certainly do. So that's, I think, what I have for this evening, but I thank you very much.
Thank you for the kind words. Councilor Murphy?
Just a couple quick comments. I know a lot of this will be repetitive, but just wanted to start by thanking the tree committee. Looking forward to their Arbor Day event. I know it's difficult for some folks being within the working hours, but thank you to the tree committee for their dedication and the work that they've done. I also wanted to thank the folks that came tonight and spoke about Juneteenth. I know some of those stories aren't easy to tell, but I think it's important to hear the history and hear the words that are spoken by the citizens here in Bridgewater. So thank you for doing so. Just wanted to highlight First Responders Day and the town cleanup. Brad, thank you for highlighting that and the work that you've done there. Looking forward to that event this weekend. Also want to encourage folks to come out for the town election, and best of luck to all the candidates that are running in that election. And then finally, thank you to you both as counselors on a personal level, and as a citizen of Bridgewater. Thank you for what you've done for the town. My family thanks you. And hopefully those folks stepping in will be able to fill those shoes, as already been mentioned. Also, thank you to Mary Lee for her work as our town clerk. I think she's been much appreciated, and I just wanted to give her a shout out as well too. So that's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Lindy?
Thank you. Before I forget, Dennis mentioned it in his farewell address, which was incredible. Pat Neary is the Bridgewater Citizen of the Year. That event is on May 8th. It's a Wednesday night at 6:30. It's at the East Bridgewater Council on Aging, because the Rotary Club of the Three Bridgewaters. So that's where it's affordable, and we picked a place to do it. There's a West Bridgewater Citizen and East Bridgewater Citizen as well. Encourage people to come out and show support for Pat. I wanted to strongly encourage more than 5% to come out and vote on Saturday. I would love to see that Bridgewater has active participation. I hear a lot of people complain. If you don't vote, don't complain. You can complain, you have a right to do that, but you need to put your vote forward. There are good candidates that have stepped up to the plate, and they are hard shoes to fill. I wanted to thank particularly Dennis for his mentorship of me over the years. I've known Dennis a long time, through a lot of the time, met him when he was running countywide and supporting county candidates. I hope to see him succeed. I think he will in his next endeavor, and I'm all in for that. Mary Lee Hunt did an outstanding job. She was a great mentor to me too. I met her before I even came to Bridgewater, and I've just enjoyed both of them. Eric, you know, I don't know who said it. Decorum, grace, and respect. I think it might have been Fred, but seriously, you did an incredible job this year. You're very even-tempered. You're very thorough. You're very patient, and you're gonna be missed too. Sean too. Hopefully I'll still get to eat his pizzas at some kind of an event or something like that. And just all the people that came out to participate. I think we need to keep Juneteenth going. I think we need to do the pride flag. I agree with the citizens that have come forward to say, let's just do it going forward so we don't have to do it in every year. I don't know if that's, we can do that or not, but I think it's a great thing. And I just want people to know that I don't want people to think that I'm not a team player. I had some reservations based on what I heard from citizens. Those are the folks that elected me to office. Like I said, I didn't get anybody telling me to be for it. And I still think there's some clarity that needs to be addressed. I went to Weymouth, like Mr. Moore mentioned. I went to West Bridgewater, right on 106 next to the Honeydew. There's a 3-story building that looks completely and totally out of place on 106 for where it is. Weymouth, I was in Brockton. I see what's going on over there with all the high rises. I kind of moved here because I loved the town of Bridgewater the way it is. I know we need to move forward. I'm not against it. I just like the approval process. I liked what we had in place. And my dad taught me, stand up for what you think is right, even if you stand alone. And that's what I did. It's hard to do. But I feel confident in what I did tonight. I want to see more in this general vicinity of the town center. I'm more worried about that, quite honestly, than further down. And my brother lived here for 8 years. I only lived here for 1 year back when I was first born. And my brother tells me about the bustling downtown and everything. I kind of missed all that when I came here. So hopefully we'll see it again. And I just want to thank you two gentlemen and thank my colleagues and the citizens of this town.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So I think I'm the last thing between everyone in bed. Or maybe you're already mentally in bed. I don't know. Just a couple of quick things. I want to start first by thanking all the residents. It was interesting when I volunteered to become a counselor. You sort of come in with all these ideas of the things you want to do, and you very quickly are met with ideas from other people and what they want to do. I realized very quickly how important it is to actually listen to those ideas and learn, right? So understand different people's perspectives. And, ultimately your contribution is much better if you've factored in the contributions of everyone who's expecting you to deliver, right? And really listen and study. And so to that end, Pat Neary has already been mentioned, but Pat Neary is someone who showed up early and continued to show up all along. And she tracked the town and she cared about the town. And she always stood in front of us asking us to do something in support of the town. And so, names like that stick out. Sam Baumgarten is another one. Certainly BCCR is a big part of that too. I learned a lot. Janet Hansen, even though I may not always vote the same way as the ideas, I do want everyone to know that I appreciate them and I listen to them and I factor them in. Ed Ivaldi is also somebody, we heard him speak tonight. He's always been here kind of watching and trying to, lend opinions to how the town works. Carlton Hunt is another one who often showed up and has a lot of ideas. And I name these I hate naming people because I'll ultimately leave a bunch of people out, but I name it just to say there are people that are along for the ride and they care and they watch and they hold us accountable and they give us ideas and they tell us where we're wrong and they tell us where we're right. And that's how this is supposed to work. And so it's exciting to me, I think on the last night to have a full house, because on the first night there was no one. Right. And so I think when people think about the impact they've had, certainly I hope that people felt that this was a welcoming space, that you could come here and share ideas without any sort of repercussion, and that we honestly care about them and want to listen to them. And so, if you're to judge your contribution, judging it on a full house is probably the right measure. So moving on from that, she's not here tonight, but Deb Ward has been amazing and super helpful to me as the town council president. Michael Dutton, I think early on we spoke and I said, you know, kind of what's the hardest part? And something to the effect of like, I have 9 bosses. And then beyond that, I have 30,000 people who watch, right? So it's like, I can't imagine a position where you have to juggle more perspectives than yours and then still like make progress. And so, you know, others have said it, your role is not an easy one. And picking priorities in a town that has 30,000 of them is hard. And I think, you know, I've constantly been impressed with your ability to navigate that. And I think you're pushing us in the right direction. So I appreciate that. You know, Jason, the same thing. I think we have some very tricky things we navigate, and we rely on your services a lot. And you've always been just kind of upfront and guided us through some pretty tricky landmines and just been you showed up at every meeting and you're just a great partner to the town. And so I really appreciate that. Others have mentioned Marilee as well. Marilee was the town clerk, but she was also the advocate for the townhouse. She was also interested in the common and parking. And so I think to know Marilee is to know Bridgewater. You know, she is one of those people who just cares about the town. And so certainly wish her well, thank her for her service as a town clerk, but also probably more so as just someone who really cares about Bridgewater. And so really appreciated that. You know, maybe just to round it out, starting with the council, I think it's interesting because you said, you know, I'm not a team player. And the ultimate team player in this sport is someone who can bring a different idea and still feel like they're having a good discussion. And so that's when democracy works, right? If you shut down ideas or if you don't let people talk that don't agree with you, those ideas don't go away. They just go into a corner and they sort of talk amongst themselves and they end up coming out many years later very different from the way they went in. And so a critical component of democracy is being able to have hard conversations with good people and come out with a good outcome. So ultimate team player in being a no in a group of yes. And so, and I would just echo that across the entire council. So you all said really nice things about me. It's very easy to guide a team that wants to be a team, that cares about the town, and that knows that there's a pothole 2 houses down on Flag Street. Like, I mean, it's amazing. I think the team we have right now, you know, and the team that will come and the people that will contribute to it, you have such different strengths. You know, you can build communities, you can shape downtown, you know, you can set strategy, you can review legal, like this team together has like so many superpowers that, you know, I'm excited to just kind of see that grow. And I really appreciated the way you all work together to support Bridgewater. And then lastly, you know, Dennis, a lot of people have said a lot of very nice things about you. I echo all of them. If people notice, I often lean over to Dennis. I'm like, what am I supposed to do in this situation? And he'll like tell me how to be the president, which is very helpful.
And then you ask Jason.
Yeah, no, I asked Jason. Yeah, right.
Confirmation.
Right. But a lot of people don't know that, you know, outside of being a counselor, Dennis also helps us navigate the county relationships. He knows the state relationships. I went with Dennis to a state event, and the reason people care about us is because of those connections. And so Dennis has spent a lot of time building real relationships and would show up to these events and everybody knew who he was. And I was always impressed by that. And it wasn't like a politician thing where it was like relationships, like you knew people and you care about people. And I think ultimately when you vote for someone, you know, vote on, you know, do they have good judgment? Do they take different opinions into kind of consideration? And then do they honestly care about the people around them? And Dennis checks all of those boxes. And like others have said, you know, I think it would be an incredible asset to have you continue your journey here and connect that space back to Bridgewater. And so thank you for all of your years of contribution. Thank you for always bringing the banner and the flag. As others said, you showed up everywhere, and it was really appreciated. So I think that's it. So thank you. Maybe I'll be back. I hope so. But thank you. And with that, we have no executive session. I will entertain a motion.
So
to
moved.
adjourn. Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Cue the